Inside, I want to kill myself. We are on an 0-7 run over the last 2 days. After tonight was just complete bullshit. So that's how I'm going to start off this show. Horrible Sunday, 1-5. I don't even know what to tell you about that. I just don't want to do this anymore. I have never seen anything like this, man. With the slump continuing, 2 straight losses, not a good day at all. 0-4. I just have not had a good season, man. What can this slump that I'm on? The slump continues. I've reached a new peak, actually. I'm going to burn my Bruins hat, man. I don't know what is going on with the Bruins. March 8th, is that what it is? I don't even know. It's March 9th, I think. Who even knows, man? I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't even know what day it is anymore, man. Back with you after the worst day that I could possibly have. Back with you, as I always am. Until I die, at least. 0-2 yesterday, and yesterday did not go well for me. 0-5. The worst month that I've ever had in my 18 years doing this. I don't know what to even tell you about this anymore. Brook the slump yesterday as the slump discontinues. The slump continues. Somebody fucking kill me, please. I don't even know what I should do at this point other than potentially end it all. What's up, everybody? It's Toad back with you with Toadstool Sports. I was going to say better off dead again. It's a good thing I did not. I just way too early. Running on no sleep here, but I had to sleep when I had to sleep. I handicapped all the college basketball last night. I was going to do the show. I'm like, I'm not going to stay up until 3 a.m. here. Instead, I'm going to do it at 6 a.m. or whatever. No good options here if I want to get everybody college basketball information. I'm going to have 6 plays here. Let's get into it, man. Saturday, college basketball board is huge. Starts out right away with the noontime slate. We got Yukon and Georgetown on Fox at noon. Number 3 in the country, Yukon at Georgetown. Obviously, Yukon is going to be a huge favorite in this game. I don't really have too many thoughts on this, although if you look at Yukon's schedule here, you could probably make the argument this is maybe a bit of a sandwich spot because Yukon did just beat Seton Hall. They only beat them by 5, but Seton Hall was close to the top of the Big East. Yukon got that win, and next up they do play Villanova, and Villanova is now the closest opponent behind Yukon, so it is definitely possible they overlook Georgetown, especially given that it's a second straight road game, a third road game in the last 4 days. My hesitation with it would be that Yukon was a big favorite in this game against Seton Hall, and thankfully the DraftKings widget is up there now for ESPN. ESPN gives you that now for the game. So UConn was a 6.5-point favorite. They didn't cover in this game. Seton Hall was down pretty much all game, but they came all the way back, and they pretty much got right back into that game in the final minute or two. So, I'm going to have something to say about Seton Hall in a little while on this show. I could see it going either way for UConn, though, in this game. For Georgetown, of course, they're going to show up. But for UConn, you could either make the argument they're going to be hung over after a big win against Seton Hall, or you could argue, well, they didn't even cover. They had an escape, so maybe they'll show up with more effort this time. I'm kind of leaning towards the former, though, because UConn wasn't that big of a favorite. That wound up being a pretty big game. For Georgetown here, somebody's revving their engine outside. It's 6:40 in the morning, revving a motorcycle. I hate people, dude. Georgetown just went to Creighton. Georgetown, they had a pretty big game as well there, losing to Creighton on the road by 3. Presumably Creighton was the favorite in this game. Yeah, they were an 8.5-point favorite. So Georgetown, I believe, actually took them to overtime in that game as well. So Georgetown is coming off the more difficult games. That's kind of my hesitation with this, is like, which team is going to be more likely to show up than the other. So I have to stay away from this one. I feel like I'm just rambling early in the morning. I can't feel anything, man. I got my coffee. People will see that Georgetown lost to Seton Hall at home the game before that, though, and obviously people will probably have a tendency to jump on Connecticut in this game. And obviously Connecticut's the better team, but of course you're going to have to lay a ton of points with them if you want them here. They're laying 11, down from 12 here. It is a low total, 141.5. Connecticut, they play slow and not exactly the style that you would really want to lay points with on the road like this. So I guess I have to slightly lean towards taking the points with Georgetown, but no strong feeling on that. Big Ten Network at noon has Minnesota at number 13, Illinois. Minnesota, they got off to a decent start this season. They've lost 2 in a row, but they were very competitive at home against USC and Wisconsin. Although, actually, they were favored against USC because we had USC in that game, and we got a win, outright win on the underdog there. Minnesota had beaten Iowa the game before. That was a big game. And then Minnesota fell short for us against Wisconsin. We had Minnesota in that game. Thought they would bounce back. It was a horrible spot for Wisconsin, I thought, coming off the Michigan upset. But Minnesota lost, although only by 3. Now they're going out on the road to face Illinois. Will Minnesota be tired after playing all these big games in a row? Iowa, USC, Wisconsin, having a big effort in all 3? Maybe. Obviously, they're not going to overlook Illinois, so it kind of comes down to, will Illinois just be able to run them over? Now, Illinois is not as fast as they were in the past, so that helps Minnesota a bit because Minnesota wants to play really slow. Illinois won't completely push the tempo against them. Illinois just won their rivalry game against Northwestern, winning by 11 on the road there. They only have Maryland up next, and not a big deal for Illinois there. So the spot really isn't bad for Illinois. The money is coming in on Illinois, up from 15 to 16.5 here, and maybe Illinois will still kind of try to push the tempo here a little bit to throw Minnesota off a little bit. They still play faster than Minnesota does, obviously. I don't really disagree with Illinois in this one. There's just no real bad scheduling spot for Illinois. Minnesota could be a little bit tired out there, so I'll agree with the market on that with the move on Illinois early, but it's not something I want to deal with either. Next up, we're going to have the first bet as we go in chronological order here. Let's go, baby. We're going to be on SMU plus 1.5 here. I heard this game being broken down, and I'm like it sounded like it was going to be a pass for me until I looked at it myself, and I'm like, I think we actually want to do this. You might be able to get 2 on this. We're fading Virginia in this one. Virginia looks like they might go off as a 2-point favorite and maybe a little bit bigger than that, so obviously get whatever the best number is that you can here. This is on ESPN 2. You'll get SMU as a small underdog here. Virginia ranked 16th in the country. I think the public's going to come in and want Virginia here, right? Because it's basically a pick the winner. Well, I'm going to pick the ranked team, right? That would be their thoughts on this. Virginia also a 2-loss team, so they have the better record. It's not like SMU's been bad, though, and SMU just dropped out of the rankings not that long ago. Now, Ken Baum does not have SMU as a top 25 team. He's got them 36th, and their deficiency is mostly on defense. So Virginia obviously is the better team, which the odds makers are telling you. Virginia's way more balanced, but SMU might be able to speed this game up a little bit. Virginia wants to go slower, so SMU is probably going to try to push the pace a little bit. That might help them, and they could basically score with Virginia. It's just there is a big defensive disparity that's the main advantage for Virginia. They have the better defense, and usually I do lean towards the better defense. But in this case, I'm not going to. I'm going to hope that SMU is going to speed the game up here. I think Virginia's in a sandwich spot here, man. Virginia just won at Louisville. That was a big win over a ranked Louisville team. Louisville probably was favored in this game at home. Yeah, they're 4.5-point favorites. Big win for Virginia. Now they have to go out to Texas and play SMU. Seems like a little bit of a weird spot to me for Virginia here. And up next, even though I know it's not for a week, next Saturday, they play North Carolina, man. That is a huge game. Almost always big when you play North Carolina. They're a blue blood, but they're a ranked team. Looks maybe a little bit concerning here, this spot for Virginia. I think it's a sandwich spot. SMU is still fairly new to this conference as well, so it's a little bit of a weird travel spot to have to go out to Dallas or whatever to play SMU. And SMU, they're coming off barely getting by Virginia Tech. And if you remember, Virginia Tech was a winner that we had on the show here. Virginia Tech covered. Probably should have won the game. But SMU hit a prayer 3 at the buzzer here to get by Virginia Tech and win the game. Virginia Tech, they covered for us. The reason why we faded SMU here is look at the run that SMU had, man. They beat North Carolina, which was a huge win, and then SMU was in the rankings, and then what did they do? Well, They fell out of the rankings pretty fast. They lost at Clemson, but they put in a good performance at Clemson. Then they had to go to Duke, so even though they were in a North Carolina sandwich, they still played well against Clemson. I think we took a loss on that game on the show. No, it was a push, excuse me. Clemson pushed for us in that game, I believe. Then SMU played again really tough against Duke, so they were coming off 3 huge games. Then they really basically had the flat spot against Virginia Tech at home as a favorite. And I think when a team is flat like that as a favorite and they barely get by, they're going to be focused more often than not in the next game. And again, you know why we played Virginia Tech in that game, because SMU was sandwiched in between Duke and Virginia there. They had Virginia Tech sandwiched in between those 2 big teams. So that was a sandwich spot for them. Virginia is now taking their turn in the sandwich spot. So I like SMU coming off the escape. I think they're going to be more focused here. That's what we're going to do. SMU is my first play here of the day. All right. Let's go, baby. My plays are not all in the big conferences, although I find the big conference games a little bit easier to handicap. ESPN has a noontime game, and it is Kentucky and Tennessee, which is a big rivalry game. And I know both teams look a little bit down this year. Tennessee's ranked 24th, but both of these teams are actually not that bad, man. They're actually probably both maybe even a little bit underrated right now. Ken Pom has Tennessee 18th in the country and Kentucky just outside the top 25 at 27th, even though they've been struggling. This will be probably a bit of a pacing contrast because Tennessee is going to like to slow it down, and that is what they will do at home. Kentucky wants to go a little bit faster, although not as fast as they have been in recent years. Tennessee is the better defense here, although both teams have actually been pretty good. Kentucky has the slightly better offense, according to Ken Pom, although it is close. These teams are actually somewhat similar, really. They both are actually better defensively than offensively, believe it or not. This is going to be an interesting one, man. Tennessee ranked 24th in the country, according to the rankings makers, of course. Now, Kentucky, they just went to LSU, and they won by 1, and I believe Kentucky was actually a road favorite in this game, believe it or not. So they did not cover, but they did get by LSU. Maybe they were looking ahead. Tennessee, always a big game. These two teams don't like each other. There's the whole whatever, Kentucky bourbon versus Tennessee whiskey battle that goes on there. I think Kentucky will show up here, but I think Tennessee will also show up. Tennessee just beat Texas A&M. Went into 2 overtimes, though. It was not an easy game for either team, although Tennessee was an 11.5-point favorite, so debatably it should have been an easier game for them. But Texas A&M came into that game with a good record. They still have a good record, so even if Tennessee is the better team, it kind of seems like it felt like a big game, you know? And the fact that it had to go to 2 overtimes. Tennessee also has Alabama on deck, so I don't really want any part of Tennessee here either. I'm passing on this game. It's an interesting game to handicap, though, and then Tennessee will be a favorite in this game. They're a 6.5-point favorite. Looks like no real movement in the market yet, really. So it's a tough game to figure out, man. I've heard some professional opinions on the Tennessee side in this game. I have a slight opinion towards the opposite, just because I think Kentucky's kind of the more under-the-radar team right now. It is their second straight road game. They did just pull off an upset, though. Or no, excuse me, they did not. Why do I keep saying that was an upset? It wasn't. They barely got by as a favorite. Tennessee also barely got by as a favorite, although a bigger favorite. But Tennessee had to go to double OT. Tennessee has Alabama on deck, although probably they won't overlook a rival like Kentucky, but I think Kentucky is the more likely team to be fully focused here based on what I see in the scheduling. All right, TNT at noon. This is our next play, man. We're going to take the points with Butler, plus 6.5 at Seton Hall. I just mentioned Seton Hall a little while ago, so you know what they just did, but the spot is worse than just coming off a Yukon game. This is on TNT and True TV here. Now, yes, I know Butler plays a bit faster. Seton Hall is going to want to slow this thing to a halt, to a Seton halt. But, of course, you're asking Seton Hall to lay a ton of points, and Seton Hall is much better on the defensive end than the offensive end, and they play slow, so they're not exactly the type of team you want to lay points with. Total's 145, so it's a pretty low total here, so taking the points makes more sense in a game like this. Butler, They're coming into this game off a pretty ugly loss to Xavier. They lost by double digits on the road. They've lost 4 games in a row, although the prior 3 were on the road in a close game against Creighton. And then they lost to Villanova and St. John's. I almost said San Jose. I'm so out of it. St. John's. We all have to. I can't forget St. John's.
Yeah, inside, I want to kill myself.
So those games, I mean, we're against good teams in the Big East. Although, yeah, maybe Butler should have performed a little better at home, whatever. But I think Butler's going to be the more desperate team here, man. They're 1-5 in conference. They're quickly just plummeting out of the tournament picture. They need to get a win. This is a game they might be able to hang in against number 25 Seton Hall just because of the style that Seton Hall plays and the spot. Again, look at the spot for Seton Hall. They just played Yukon to within 5 points. So that was a monster game for Seton Hall. They were way behind in this game, and they did not go away, man. Yukon probably took their foot off the gas thinking the game was over. They were up 18 points close to the middle of the second half, and then Seton Hall crept all the way back, got to within 2 points, got to within 1 point in the final minute of the game. So it was a huge performance for Seton Hall. They didn't go away. And then up next, they play St. John's, which is a bigger game as well, as St. John's is quickly establishing themselves again and is a one-loss team in the conference. So this will be a bigger game for St. John's coming up. Butler, I like Butler in this one, man. The more desperate team, Seton Hall's in a sandwich spot. We got Butler plus the points in that one. So 2 plays in the noon slate there. Tyson, what's up, man? Thanks for hanging out ridiculously early. I apologize. I don't feel very good right now. I'm way out of it, man. Maybe I should be doing these at night. There's no good option. No good option. If anybody wants me to talk about some game that I'm not talking about, I can, because I am skipping a lot of games here. I've talked about every one of these games so far, though, because they're all TV games. Notre Dame and Virginia Tech's on the ACC network. Now, Virginia Tech just played really tight at SMU. That was a big game for them. Could be maybe a little bit of a hangover after that. After you play well as a road underdog like that and you fall short, I think maybe the move is to go against a team after that. They play Syracuse next. Syracuse at least has that established name and has an okay record this year, and then Louisville after that. So maybe Notre Dame a little bit under the radar here. Notre Dame, not horrible this year, although the record doesn't look good. Notre Dame's on a 3-game skid right now, although it started out on the Pacific Coast. They lost to Clemson, no real shame in that. And then Miami's been on fire, so not going to blame Notre Dame for that, really. Notre Dame, that game was a little bit closer, though, than the 12-point final indicates, and they do play North Carolina next, so I guess you could kind of make the argument Notre Dame is also in a sandwich spot here, so I'm staying away from it. Virginia Tech's actually up to a 6-point favorite here. Total's fairly low at 142. I kind of prefer taking the points in that game, but again, my weak opinions, man, don't put too much weight into these. Georgia Tech is at NC State here, also at noon on the CW network. This is a bit of a mismatch. Georgia Tech's no good. They're coming off getting smoked by Pitt, though, at home, which is really, really bad game for Georgia Tech, man. Pitt's not good. You lose by, by 23. You lose by 23 at home to anybody. You're probably going to show up focused in the next game, so at least you're probably going to get a focused effort at the very least out of Georgia Tech. NC State, there is the possibility they overlook Georgia Tech, because NC State just put up 113 points against FSU. Florida State, that was a win. I gave that out on the show last weekend, I believe. That was the part of the good start to Saturday that wound up not being very good by the end of the day. Florida State was in a horrible spot in that game. They just almost upset Duke coming into that game, so it was an obvious fade spot that Florida State was in there, to me at least. So NC State caught them at a good time. Yeah, NC State is good, but you put up 113 points against anybody and blow them out like that by whatever that was, 34 points, you're going to be feeling pretty good about yourself. And then they have Clemson on deck, so that is a big game as well. So this game, I think, is Georgia Tech or pass. Georgia Tech plus the points, however many points they're getting here, 16.5. Total's a little bit higher in this one at 156, so behave accordingly, I suppose. CBS Sports gets one of these Colonial games at 12, the only Colonial game that's at 12 between Elon and Hofstra. Elon, they've been decent to start the season. They just took a pretty ugly loss in Northeastern. Elon was, I'm guessing, probably a road favorite in this game. Yeah, they were a 3.5-point road favorite here, so not a very good loss for them losing to Northeastern. Maybe they were looking ahead because Hofstra is near the top of this conference, and right now it's kind of between Hofstra and UNC Wilmington, I think, as far as who's the best team in this conference. Hofstra is coming in off a pretty ugly loss as well. They lost at Stony Brook. Hofstra was definitely going to be a favorite in this game. Now, yeah, they were 6.5. Now, Stony Brook, I think, stepped up this game because I believe Stony Brook and Hofstra, I believe, are both on Long Island, if I'm not mistaken. So that was kind of a little brother situation for Stony Brook where they really got up for the game, caught Hofstra by surprise. So I could see Hofstra bouncing back nicely from that in this game, but the problem is Hofstra had not lost for a long time, man. They hadn't lost since out-of-conference play. Their previous loss was December 3rd at Columbia by 2 points, so I don't love that, man. So Hofstra losing to the other New York area schools, basically. I don't love it when a team's on a long win streak and they lose the win streak. I think that can be a bit of a hangover effect where you're not really used to losing anymore, and then you lose. It's like, well, what do you do? Like, how do you bounce back from that when you're not really used to getting punched in the mouth like that? So this game has some things going on here, man. Obviously, I don't love the game from a betting perspective. I'd probably still lean towards laying it with Hofstra, though, because I think, again, you can kind of explain what happened in that last game for them. Looks like more of a bounce back, but it's a stay away from me. Next up is on my list of other games. I have I'm going to give out 6 plays, and I have 7 other ones that were close to making my card, and this next one up is one of those. So I will clarify if it's one of those so you can know kind of how I weigh these things. Duquesne at Fordham on the USA Network. A10 action here at 12:30 p.m. I think Duquesne is in a bad spot here, man. Duquesne, they just played pretty tough against Dayton, and now I know Dayton was only a small road favorite here. It was at Duquesne, but Duquesne, they played tough, man, and Dayton's undefeated in the A10. That's a big game, playing against Dayton and then falling just short, so that alone, I think, could make Duquesne a little bit flat. The game was pretty close towards the end of it, but to make matters worse, well, Duquesne has to go on the road. Duquesne is in Pittsburgh, and now they're going to the Bronx, I believe, for this game. Up next, they got the best team in the A10 up next, man, St. Louis. So that is a huge look-ahead spot as well. So I think this is a sandwich. Fordham is one of the few teams that's below Duquesne in the standings. Fordham coming in off losing to St. Louis by double digits, by 22 points, although, of course, that was on the road. St. Louis is very, very good. I think Fordham is in a nice position to bounce back here. What I also like is that they're returning home, and they played pretty poorly their last 2 home games as well, losing both of them. So they actually don't have a conference home win yet, I believe. So I think Fordham's going to be hungry for one. They lost to Richmond and George Mason at home, and those 2 teams are a little bit better than Duquesne is. So I like Fordham in this one, man. Close to being a play for me. The line has gone from Fordham +2 all the way to a pick'em. So yeah, I would go Fordham, pick'em, or if you look at the money line market and there's a cheaper money line price than what you're getting on the pick'em, you could do that as well. That's the way that I would play this one. That one is on my short list, if you will. Not actually on my card, but I do like it. I guess one of my hesitations is that Duquesne is kind of hungry as well, perhaps, because they also only have 1 conference win. But other than that, yeah, it looks like a pretty good setup for Fordham in that one. Number 18, Alabama at Oklahoma. I've talked about every game so far, man, but most of these games are TV games and big conference games early. This is the SEC Network at 1 p.m. Probably the public's going to have a tendency to want to play Alabama. They know what they've seen out of Alabama the last few years. Alabama wants to go fast. That's what they do. They score. The public likes that. Oklahoma's going to try to slow this thing down, man. They're a slow-paced team, so they might be able to frustrate Alabama a little bit. But Oklahoma plays poor defense, so that is kind of the problem. Oklahoma is actually a much better offensive team, even though they play slow. They're better offensively than defensively, I should say. And Alabama also is better on offense than defense, significantly so. Ken Pom has Alabama second in the country in offense and 71st in defense. So a couple of lopsided teams here towards the offensive end. Alabama just broke a 2-game loss streak. Now, I think their loss to Texas, I think, was explainable because Alabama had lost that big game to Vandy the game before that, and that was their first loss in a while. So I think that was a hangover spot that they were in after that against Texas. They bounced back with a win over Mississippi State last time out, but now they're playing a second straight road game, third road game in 4 games. They have Tennessee on deck, which could be a look ahead. That's a bigger game, so even though they had a nice bounce back and that could carry momentum into this game, there are some things that are negatives, I think, for the spot here for Alabama. For Oklahoma, probably they're going to be hungrier, at least for a win, because they've lost 3 games in a row, including losing at home and losing for us. I thought they caught Florida in a good spot to catch them in a sandwich spot, and Oklahoma was not very competitive in that game, unfortunately. Now staying at home, maybe we'll get a better effort out of Oklahoma in this one. I would lean towards Oklahoma in this one. I think they're going to be the team that's a bit more desperate at this point, trying to get a win here. Their only conference win was at home, by the way, for what it's worth. They beat Ole Miss to start conference play. Obviously, Alabama's better than Ole Miss. And Ole Miss likes to play slow, so they weren't going to try to speed Oklahoma up, which Alabama might. Now, it's worrisome that the total is really high, which might mean Alabama's going to be able to speed it up, total of 176. But, again, part of the reason for that is that both defenses are bad. So that's also part of the reason why the total is that high. If you like Oklahoma, you're hoping they're going to slow the game down a bit. They're getting 5.5 points. It looks too easy to lay 5.5 with Alabama, though. So one of those lines that looks too easy as well. I would probably take it with Oklahoma, but yeah, that one is not on my radar, really. CBS at 1 has a Big Ten game, UCLA at Ohio State. UCLA having to travel to Columbus, maybe a little bit of a weird travel spot for them, although at least for them, they're already not that far away because they already just traveled to Pennsylvania to play Penn State. So UCLA is already in the area, adjusted to basically the time zone difference, whatever. They beat Penn State. Now they're going to Ohio State. I don't know that they're going to overlook Ohio State because Ohio State has been decent and like on the cusp of maybe being a tournament team, but they are below UCLA in the standings. And UCLA does play Purdue next when they come back home in 3 days. So there is the argument to be made. It is a look-ahead spot. UCLA is now playing a 4th road game in 5 games, which is not that easy, and a second straight road game. So not everything about the spot is great for UCLA. Ohio State is coming back from the West Coast and took a loss to Washington. So you might get a better effort out of them, even though they are having to adjust back to the time zone here. At least they're coming back home here. I would probably lean to Ohio State in this one. They're more in need for some wins here. They're actually laying up to 4.5 now, up from 3 to 4.5, which is a little bit worrisome, laying points in a game against a UCLA team that plays slower and probably is going to come out and play some defense. 148 is the total there. As far as UCLA is concerned, yeah, they're a little bit more defensive-minded. They play slow. Ken Bum actually has Ohio State as the better team. Ohio State plays more of a mid-tempo game and is better offensively than defensively. So maybe Ohio State would be able to speed it up a little bit and make UCLA a little bit uncomfortable. But, yeah, I would lay it overall with Ohio State. It also looks too easy to take the points with UCLA, right? Like, UCLA is the bigger basketball name. They have the better record, getting points. It looks a little easy to take those points. Okay. I'm skipping some of these smaller conference games here, obviously. Of course, we do have Buffalo and Miami, Ohio here. Miami, Ohio, 18-0, man. One of the remaining undefeateds, man. I think we're down to just Miami, Ohio, Nebraska, and Arizona at this point, I believe, are the only undefeateds left. And one of those things is not like the others. Obviously, that is Miami, Ohio. They face a very weak schedule, but Buffalo's not as good as their start to the season. Look, they've been taking some losses recently. Miami, Ohio is obviously going to be the favorite here, but there is the potential look ahead for Miami, Ohio to Kent State because that is an Ohio battle. Kent State is the closest team behind them in the standings. Possible look ahead spot for Miami, Ohio there. And, of course, again, Miami, Ohio is not as good as their record looks, although neither is Buffalo. Miami, Ohio is a double-digit favorite here. Buffalo did just play Kent State, so that was a difficult game for them. Now they have Miami, Ohio on the road, and they play Akron next, so very difficult run of games for Buffalo here, man. Playing the top 3 teams in the conference all one after the other, that is not easy. So you could worry about the fatigue factor for Buffalo here. So I got to stay away from it. Miami, Ohio did drop slightly from 10.5 to 10. I would probably lean towards taking the points, but Buffalo is coming off of a more difficult game, so I do worry about that a bit. I don't think they're going to overlook Miami, Ohio, of course. Both of these teams are overrated, but Miami, Ohio has got to be the more overrated team just because they're still undefeated. That's some MAC action there at 1 p.m. Also at 1 p.m. in the SoCon, Chattanooga and Western Carolina actually is a little bit interesting to me. Chattanooga just pulled off an upset at Wofford. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, probably want to look to fade Chattanooga. That was a nice upset of Wofford on the road. They have East Tennessee next, who's near the top of the conference. So Chattanooga basically looks like they're in a sandwich spot against a Western Carolina team that hasn't done a whole lot for the last who knows how many years. Probably since they had Kevin Martin, if you remember him in the NBA. He went to Western Carolina. Probably they haven't been good since he was there. So Chattanooga, that's the spot that they're in here. But for Western Carolina, I don't think they're in a very good spot either. They just beat East Tennessee, so that's a big game. And they have Mercer up next, and I'm pretty sure that Mercer is actually the team that knocked Western Carolina out of the conference tournament last year. So I think that's a big look-ahead spot. Mercer's been okay this year. But yeah, so Mercer is the team that ended Western Carolina's season last year too. So I think they might remember that. So they will be looking ahead to Mercer. So to me, this looks like both teams are in sandwich spots here. So it's a game that I'm staying away from, of course. Both teams in sandwich spots. It could be a look towards an over, maybe. The total did go up from 148 to 149.5. And you think both teams might be a little bit tired. It manifests more on the defensive side sometimes. Maybe we'll see this thing get over that total. Western Carolina's gone up from 1.5 to 2.5 for what it's worth. But again, I don't love either side of this, really. And then I don't know if Chattanooga, I don't know if Wofford was any sort of revenge game or anything like that. It looks like no. Furman was the team that knocked them out of the tournament last year, the conference tournament. So that's that game for you. 2 p.m. slate. We have number 2 in the country, Iowa State, going to Cincinnati on NBC Sports and Peacock for this one. Now, I mean, first glance, you got to think the public's instinct is going to be, well, Iowa State's going to bounce back here, right? They've been awesome this year. They have 1 loss, and that's what they just took. They just took a blowout loss at Kansas. Kansas stepped it up, played really well in that game, and then Kansas did not fall into the letdown spot yesterday, unfortunately, which I'll talk about that in my later morning show when I talk about the rest of the sports today, when I get in here and do that probably in a couple hours. Now, I talk about this a lot, man. When a team is undefeated this deep into the season, like, the public's going to have a tendency to say, well, that was just a blip. Iowa State's going to bounce back. They're the way better team here. But I have a tendency to think that loss can linger. I'm not going to start singing the Cranberries here, but you can go see my zombie cover that I put out as in my anti-war ukulele releases. I think Iowa State might be hung over here, man. Again, when a team's undefeated this deep into the season and they finally take a loss, I think a lot of times it hangs that team over more than, like, I think that's usually, that happens to be more the case than the bounce back happens, if that makes sense. So I think the public looks at this type of thing the wrong way. Yes, it was a blowout. Yes, somewhat embarrassing, but it was against a blue blood program in Kansas, at Kansas, where it's really difficult to win, as we saw last night, unfortunately. So, yeah, I mean, I think Iowa State could be hung over here. It's a second straight road game, third road game in 4 games. Cincinnati is not exactly a familiar location for Iowa State to go, though Cincinnati's been in the Big 12 for a bit now, but they're probably pretty easy to overlook. And Cincinnati's coming in off of ending a 3-game loss streak with a win over Colorado, and it was not a good win. Now, Colorado was coming off that game where they covered for us against Texas Tech, and they came all the way back late in that game to cover and almost win the game against Texas Tech. So I thought Colorado would have nothing left in the tank in this game, and it looked like that for a while. Cincinnati was annihilating them in this game. They were winning 50-29 early in the second half here. Monster lead for Cincinnati, and then Cincinnati took their foot off the gas or went completely cold, whatever. I don't know. Cincinnati's not a good offense, and Colorado crept back into this game, man. So Colorado wound up putting in another big effort here for a second game in a row as a big underdog here. Cincinnati barely got through this thing. So I think that actually makes Cincinnati more focused in this game. And maybe they thought the game against Colorado was over, and maybe they started looking ahead to Iowa State. And that wasn't a good spot for Cincinnati either, because they had covered against UCF. They had this big game against Iowa State on deck, so they were in a bit of a sandwich. Both teams were in a bad spot in that one. So if you saw my analysis when I broke down that game the other night, I believe that's what I said, which is why I passed on the game. Yeah, I like Cincinnati in this one, man. I think Iowa State might have the hangover from taking their first loss, and I think you're going to get a focused effort out of Cincinnati here. Cincinnati, they don't play slow. They actually play on the faster side, but they're way better defensively than offensively. So we'll see what Cincinnati could do here, man. But Cincinnati is a very imbalanced team, but they're really, really good on defense. They're a top 10 defensive team, according to KenPom, just outside the top 200 offensively. And obviously, Iowa State's way more balanced, but both teams are better defensively than offensively. Iowa State kind of a mid-tempo team. Cincinnati will probably play a bit fast, but the total's low for a reason because both these teams play good defense. 141 is the total. Probably means that the points will be a little bit more at a premium in a game like this. So taking the points makes more sense in that game. That's what I would do in that game. Cincinnati plus the points would be my lean in that one. All right. We got number 19, Florida, number 10, Vandy here at 2 p.m. on ESPN. A little bit of an interesting game here as well. I think both of these teams are actually underrated right now, as KenPom has Florida 10th in the country and Vandy 11th. So he's got Florida severely underrated. He actually has these two teams flipped in the rankings, but close ranking-wise, which is probably why you're not seeing Vandy getting a full home court here. They're only a 2-point favorite, so the odds makers are actually also telling you Florida's a slightly better team here. So that is interesting. It almost looks too easy to play the higher-ranked Vandy team here. Florida maybe still getting a little bit overlooked here, man, because they have 5 losses, but they don't have any bad losses. I mean, they lost to Arizona, Duke, Yukon, all close games, too. TCU, and then Missouri was obviously their worst loss on the road. But those other teams, 3 out of the 4 are like top 10 teams, and then the other one, not a horrible team in TCU. Florida's on a nice little run here. They really had a good game last time out against Oklahoma, and what I thought was a sandwich spot after Florida beat Georgia and Tennessee. They had to go out to Oklahoma with Vandy looming on deck, and they still were able to take care of business and cover. That shows you something, man, that Florida not getting caught in a bad spot like that and probably still will be focused here. I know it's a second straight road game, but I kind of like Florida in this one. Vandy, they're definitely less battle-tested, man. Florida, as I just showed you, they had that crazy strength of schedule. For Vandy, their best games are beating St. Mary's, I guess. SMU, pretty decent win. And then Alabama was like their big legitimizing game. So those are the 3 big wins. Florida has definitely gone through a greater gauntlet than Vandy has. Vandy just took a loss as well to Texas. So this is the problem, another problem with Vandy. Exactly what I said with Iowa State, man. We have another team that just fell from the ranks of the unbeaten. That was Vandy, losing at Texas. And again, I think that could actually hang you over a bit, even though it was a double-digit loss, whatever. The public's probably going to have a tendency to think Vandy's going to bounce back here. I look at it the other way. I like Florida in this game. I think a loss like that this deep into the season, losing your undefeated status, can linger. Sure, Vandy will want to show up because I think people still kind of knock them for not having a strong strength of schedule. So this would be a big win for them for both teams. But, yeah, I mean, I just think the spot sets up better for Florida. And, again, the odds makers are telling you that the rankings makers have got this one a little bit wrong and that Florida pretty much is way better than you actually think that they are. So Florida is the lean in that one for me. ESPN 2 at 2 p.m. We have a Missouri Valley game between Bradley and Illinois State. Both of these teams are Illinois. They're both Illinois schools, I believe. So this is a big game for both teams. Now, Bradley has been one of the better teams in this conference for a while, and they are up near the top of the conference, with Illinois State being a little bit behind them. Bradley coming in off a close call against Evansville, man. I think Bradley was in a sandwich in that game. They'd beaten Northern Iowa the game before that, and they had Illinois State on deck, so I think they overlooked Evansville, and they'd already beaten Evansville once, too, so it was a second matchup. Had to go on the road that time, and Evansville played pretty well and came close against Bradley, so that should focus Bradley more coming into this game because they just weren't focused in that game and they almost got caught. Now, Illinois State, though, they're also coming off a number of bad performances, actually. They've lost 3 in a row, losing to Valpo, Illinois, Chicago, and Indiana State. So they've lost to 3 teams that are not the better teams in this conference. And Indiana State's a team that already beaten. Maybe they started looking ahead. I don't know. But I think after a bad run like that for Illinois State, I think you're definitely going to see focus out of them here. Like, they are going to be in need of a win here, and those are ugly conference losses. But if you look at the line in this game, the odds makers are really telling you something with this line. Illinois State's a 6-point favorite in this game, up from 5 to 6. And like, the public, if they look at this game and want some TV action, they're probably going to want Bradley because they might remember Bradley being in the conference championship last year. Bradley has the better record, both overall and in conference. So it looks pretty easy to take the points with Bradley. But the odds makers are telling you Illinois State is actually the better team here, despite their recent lull that they've had. And I wouldn't disagree. I would lean to Illinois State in that game as well for those reasons. So it's an interesting one. Also at 2 p.m., man, so many games. TNT has TCU and Utah. It's a Big 12 game. It's not the most interesting Big 12 game, but it's on TV, and I actually this one was on my radar, man, as being a close one to making my card here. I like Utah in this game, and really it's almost entirely because TCU just put in a huge effort at BYU in the last game, so that's kind of why I'd be looking to fade TCU. And TCU, look at their last 3 games, really. Starting back on January 6th, they took Kansas into overtime on the road. Then they had to go to Arizona. They couldn't really put up the huge effort against Arizona. They did lose by double digits at home, TCU didn't play well in that game. But Arizona's an elite team this year. TCU then had to go on the road again into Elevation and played BYU really close. So they're coming off a stretch of 3 big games, though. And this game, they were close in this game against BYU, man. TCU was winning the game early in the second half. They didn't go away. They were still within 3 points in the final 3 minutes of the game, and then they just fell a little bit short at the end. And again, when a team falls short like that in a big game, TCU was actually a 13.5-point underdog in that game. When a huge dog like that falls just short, I want to look to fade them in the next game because I think they might come out flat here. They do have Oklahoma State next. I know Oklahoma State's kind of trailed off after playing well out of conference. They haven't been doing well in conference, so maybe not really a total look-ahead spot there for TCU, but probably Oklahoma State's still probably a bigger game than Utah is. I mean, Utah's just been down. Utah doesn't have a conference win yet. They're at the bottom of the conference. Now, TCU is already adjusted to playing in Elevation because both of these games are in Utah here, BYU and Utah, but it is also a second straight game in Elevation, so I can see that going both ways. And for Utah, yeah, they're coming off a pretty difficult game against Texas Tech, where I liked Texas Tech to cover in that game, and they actually didn't. Utah was coming off their own really difficult game against BYU. That's a big rivalry game, so I thought they were going to be really flat in that game against Texas Tech, and they were for a lot of it. Texas Tech was winning by margin, but I think Texas Tech kind of just packed it in early, and Utah snuck in the back door in that game. But I think Utah will be more prepared for this one. They're back at home. They did still lose by double digits in that last game. They're still looking for their first conference win. I like Utah in this game. This is actually a winnable game for them, too. TCU only laying 4.5, 5 here in this one, down from 5.5. Total's not that low at 156, but yeah, it would be Utah in this game for me, man. This one is almost on my card for what it's worth. So, and, you know, the public will, if they look at this game, the public is not going to be playing Utah, you know. That's obviously they're a team that's going to be avoided by the public. So that's that game for you. Big Ten Network has Rutgers at Wisconsin at 2 p.m. Rutgers coming off a nice win as an underdog. That was a win for us, actually, against Northwestern. I think Northwestern was coming off a big game against Michigan State, I want to say, and had Illinois on deck. So I think that was a big sandwich spot that Northwestern was in. We got the win with Rutgers as a home underdog. Now Rutgers has to go to Wisconsin. You got to figure they'll still get up for a game against a big name like Wisconsin, though. But they are pulling off an upset. Rutgers is, and having to travel to Madison, maybe not that easy. Wisconsin, they just beat Minnesota, and I thought that was going to be their letdown because Wisconsin had the monster win over Michigan on the road the game before then. And Minnesota almost got the job done for us. And they wound up missing by 1-2 points here as far as the cover was concerned. It was a nice road win for Wisconsin in a way because that's still a rivalry game and whatever, but I don't know. To me, I think it was still a little bit of a flat performance from Wisconsin here, so I don't know what we're going to get out of them in this game. I could see them playing better here, or I could see them not really caring about Rutgers. They play Penn State next, which is not really that much of a look ahead or anything, so I don't know what to do with this game. I have heard some professional opinions on the Wisconsin side, on the Rutgers side in this one. Wisconsin up from 15.5 to 16 here. Total's not that high at 150. Wisconsin does play a bit faster than they used to, though. So, I don't know. Rutgers, I believe, plays slow and is going to try to ugly it up. So, maybe if they're able to do that, like, probably its side and total are correlated in this one. I think if Wisconsin is able to speed it up, they probably will cover. But if Rutgers is able to muddy the game up, you're probably looking at a Rutgers cover here if it's going to wind up being lower scoring. I don't have much of an opinion on the game, man. So, yeah, I don't know if I want to leave it at that. Like, I don't know. I don't want to, like, give out, like, an opinion that – I don't want to give out an opinion that seems strong when it isn't. You know what I mean? So I try to relay that to people, like, just give out all the information that I can here. And, you know, like, try to help people do their own analysis of these games, too, and maybe think about things in a different way, whatever. But, of course, people might see something that I don't as well. That's why we're like pooling information here, really. You know, although I know I get stubborn when I disagree on things, but yeah. I probably slightly lean to Wisconsin in that game, to be honest, because I think Wisconsin's coming off a bit of a flat effort where Rutgers just did pull off an upset and does have to travel. Next game up is Fox, 2 p.m. More Big Ten action here. Big Ten gets a lot of different networks now, man. They're on Fox Sports 1. They're on the Big Ten Network. They're on, which I think is associated with Fox Sports, if I'm not mistaken. They get NBC Sports and Peacock for some games. Yeah, they're all over the place, man. This is going to be one of my plays, I believe. Let me see. Let me make sure it is. I believe it is. Yeah, we're going to be... Wait, what? Hold on. Why do I not have this listed in my... Let me see. How many games do I thought I had 6. I have SMU, Butler. Let's see. Whoa. I apologize, man. I'm all discombobulated here. I actually have more than 6 plays here. Holy crap. I was so out of it last night. I don't know what I was doing. I have 2 plays here that I've not added to the system. Hold on. So I think I have 1 play. Yeah. 1 play that I haven't added to the system. Okay. So, yeah. Yeah, I apologize, man. I want to I got to figure this out. Yeah, okay. All right, I think I'm going to have 7 plays, if I'm not mistaken here. On 1 I've not added to the system yet, which I will. Yeah, 1 I've not added to the system yet, which I will when I get to it. Okay, yeah, my mistake here. Whoops. And then let me make sure I didn't skip any of these games yet here. No, I did not. I have 2 games in the 2 p.m. slate here, but this is one of my games. We were on Indiana, minus 2.5 here against Iowa. Okay, let me see what the line is now here. Where are they at? I'm like, that's not the line. That's Iowa State. Yeah, Indiana's up from 2 to 2.5 here. I know it is a bit of a low total here. Iowa's going to want to play really slow and ugly this up, and I'm hoping Indiana can speed this up a little bit. Indiana wants to go a little bit faster than Iowa does at the very least. Indiana's more of a mid-tempo team. Indiana's still pretty good, man. They're not as good as Iowa, but they're both balanced teams. Indiana's a little bit more balanced, or a little bit more imbalanced towards the offense. Iowa's a little more imbalanced towards the defense, but they're both balanced teams. I know Iowa's been unlucky, according to Ken Palm, which does worry me a little bit. Indiana, a little bit less unlucky, but both teams are unlucky in his luck index, so I'm fine with that as well. But really, this is all about the spot, man. We're fading Iowa in this one. Look at what Iowa's coming off of, dude. After they got upset by Minnesota, they've been a little bit, I don't want to say they've been spiraling, but they've lost both games since then. But look at the games they played. They had a big game against Illinois, who's a legit team right now, man. And Iowa was down big in this game, and they came all the way back and played them to within 4 points late in the game. So Iowa didn't go away in that game. Then they had to go to Purdue, which is a really difficult place to win. And Iowa didn't go away in this game either. Iowa was actually winning this game early in the second half. Close game almost the entire way. And Iowa was still in this game all the way down the stretch, down 4 points in the final minute. Yeah, so Iowa didn't go away in either game. They played really close both games. I think this might be the flat spot here, man. Even though Indiana's slightly above them in the standings, Indiana's still Indiana. I mean, they have a good track record, obviously, but I think this might be the spot where Iowa just runs out of gas here, man. After those 2 huge games, Indiana coming into this one off a blowout loss to Michigan, and I know they're in a Michigan sandwich. They got Michigan up next, but Indiana's lost 2 games in a row, and they were to Nebraska and Michigan State, and I think you could explain that loss to Michigan State because Indiana had that tough game against Nebraska, the prior game where they could have pulled off that win, and they fell short. So I think this is more of a bounce-back spot for Indiana here. And I see Iowa maybe being out of gas here. So I like Indiana in this one. I think Ken Baum has the number about where the number actually is as well. Indiana is the play in that one, man. Now let me see as far as my... I'm looking at my... let me see here. We have that one. Yeah, I apologize. I'm still looking at my... I have a notepad here where I just have everything. I have my notes of like which games are on my short list, which games actually made my card. Let me see. Which most of the games that made my card are, well, not most of them. I guess less than half of them are big conference games. That's my last big conference game, actually. I have 3 early-ish big conference games, and the rest of my games are not. Okay. But yeah, I'm just making sure that I have everything in the system here. I have 6, and then I know what my 7th play is because I have it in my notepad here, so I just have to remember to talk about that game. Okay. I think we got it. The next game up is my next play, by the way, and it is UNC-Asheville plus the points. So we're going with this one, too, against Winthrop. This is a spot, man. This game is on ESPN Plus if you want to watch it at 2 p.m. Winthrop, I know they're better than their record looks, and I said that going into their last game because that last game, it looked really easy to play High Point in that one, man, because High Point has dominated this Big South Conference the last couple of years. Probably should have won the conference both years. They only won it last year. But Winthrop is a very under-the-radar team right now, man. They're a solid team. They played a difficult out-of-conference schedule, playing Nebraska pretty close, Arkansas pretty close. This is a legit Winthrop team. But we're going to fade them here because they just demolished High Point in that game, and I gave out Winthrop as a lean in that game. I liked it because Winthrop was actually either a really small dog or a small favorite in this one. I forget. They were a small dog here, so the odds makers are really telling you something that Winthrop not that much worse than High Point, and they got the job done, and that was a huge win because not only did they beat High Point to pull into a tie with them atop the Big South, High Point was the winner of the conference last year. They've been the best team in the conference the last 2 years. So huge win for all those reasons. But also, Winthrop lost to High Point in the conference championship last year. So that was a huge win for Winthrop for that reason too. First time facing High Point since losing to them in the conference championship last year. Big time revenge for Winthrop, beating the team that ended their season last year. That was huge for Winthrop, man. So Winthrop got that job done. But now they're playing UNC-Asheville, and oh yeah, guess whose turn it is to be in the revenge role here? Yeah, that would be UNC-Asheville, because Winthrop knocked UNC-Asheville out of the Big South tournament last year in the semifinals of the tournament. So now UNC-Asheville, I think, is going to be the avenging team in this one and want revenge here. And they actually beat UNC-Asheville in the regular season in March as well. So maybe a little bit of double revenge there. Winthrop did lose to them on the road here, where we have the game today, by the way. Winthrop did lose in this arena last year. So interesting to note. But now UNC-Asheville has a little bit of double revenge. The big revenge that matters, man, is that they're the team that beat Winthrop is the team that beat them in the conference tournament. That's the big thing. And UNC-Asheville's a bit down this year, so they look pretty easy to overlook in this conference right now. And Winthrop has Radford next. And by the way, Radford is the only other one-loss team in the conference right now besides Winthrop and High Point. So this is a sandwich spot. I think they might look ahead to Radford here a little bit. So this spot, yeah, to me, it's all UNC-Asheville for me in this one, man. UNC-Asheville's coming off a loss to Presbyterian. It was on the road. It wasn't a great loss for them. And UNC-Asheville had beaten Radford on the road the game before this. UNC-Asheville was really good in the game against Radford as a pretty big underdog, I would assume, in that game. They pulled off a big win, and I think that put them in a sandwich spot, man, between Winthrop and Radford. So I think UNC-Asheville kind of got caught there. They lost to a not great Presbyterian team. I think UNC-Asheville might have been looking ahead here. They're going to show up, in my opinion, for this game against Winthrop, the team that ended their season last year. That's what we're going with. UNC-Asheville plus the points. Even though I think Winthrop's not as good as their I think Winthrop is, better than they look, better than the record looks. And I think UNC-Asheville might actually be not as bad as the record looks either. Ken Bum doesn't have them great, but he does have them as an unlucky team. He has them playing slow. He has them as a balanced team at the very least, so they're balanced in below mediocrity. He's got Winthrop outside the top 100, though. Winthrop is a more imbalanced team, though, and they're bad defensively, although still better than Asheville, I think. But Winthrop is pretty weak on the defensive end, man. Both teams are low in Ken Bum's luck index, so they're both unlucky right now. But Winthrop goes a little bit faster. They're mid-tempo. UNC-Asheville, the hope is that they're going to ugly the game up and slow it down. Total's not that low, though, in the 150s, but I think the spot definitely is shouting to me for UNC-Asheville in that one, so I like it. All right. Rider at St. Peter's kind of caught my eye when I was looking at these games because Rider, they just pulled off a big upset, man, at home against Iona. Rider is really, really bad in the MAAC this year. They're an inept team pretty much, and beating Iona is pretty crazy, even though it was at home, whatever. Iona probably overlooked them, but Iona's been, they're usually one of the teams that's in the mix to win this conference every year, so that was a big win for Rider. Now they got to go on the road to St. Peter's, coming off that big effort. Now the question is, can Rider put in a big effort 2 games in a row? That is the question, because I don't think they're going to overlook St. Peter's, who's now sitting atop the MAAC conference and has won it 2 of the last 5 years or something. So Rider probably won't overlook them. I think both teams are in New Jersey as well, if I'm not mistaken. So there's a little in-state sibling rivalry here as well, with St. Peter's basically probably taking the role of the bigger brother as well. I believe that's the case. But the question is, can Rider maintain the effort, man? Yes, that's in Jersey City. Now, the fact that Rider got their first conference win and broke a long losing streak, and that was actually their first Division I win, that's actually kind of big. Sometimes that will help propel you forward, right? Because it's like there's this monkey on your back. Oh, my God, we don't even have a Division I win yet. And then once you get it, it's almost like a relief. That's off your back, right? And you can start playing looser. So there are positives here for Rider, despite coming off a pretty big upset win. St. Peter's is also coming off an upset, though. They went on the road and they upset Quinnipiac after beating Merrimack. And they have Iona next and then Merrimack again. So this is sandwiched in between better teams in the conference, man. So they're in a sandwich spot here. And the last time they were in a spot like this, I gave out a play on Mount St. Mary's, and we got it right. We got the win with that one. So I would actually probably lean to Rider in this game. I know it's very, very ugly. I don't want to do it just because they are coming off a big upset, but St. Peter's is in the more difficult spot. They're down from 11 to 10.5 here. You're asking St. Peter's to cover a big number here, man, and these teams, you're probably not going to see a lot of scoring in this game. So asking St. Peter's to win by double digits is a pretty big ask. 135.5 is the total. It has gone up, but it's still a pretty low total. So that's the information on that one. Syracuse is at Boston College on the ACC network. We're still in the afternoon slate here after an hour, man. Oh, man, these basketball shows take forever. Syracuse is coming up beating Florida State. Not a big win for Syracuse. Going on the road to face BC, though, and Virginia Tech, Miami, NC State all on deck. Those might be bigger games than BC. I mean, BC is down right now, so potential look ahead for Syracuse there. BC coming off losing pretty ugly to Louisville and Clemson. Coming back home where they lost to NC State, although they played decently in that game. Yeah, I would prefer BC in this game if I was going to play it, but no strong opinion on this one at all. Syracuse up from 5.5 to 6. Totals in the 130s, so it's low. So points at a bit more of a premium in that one. So those are my thoughts on that. Not a whole lot of thoughts there. The Summit League has the top two teams in the Summit facing off, and it's not a TV game. St. Thomas and North Dakota State. These are both like almost definitely the best two teams in this conference. One of these two teams should win the conference when all is said and done. I'm kind of rooting for the Tommies just because, North Dakota State has done it before. St. Thomas is kind of new to Division I, so. And for Tyler Hero's brother, waiting on a hero to save them, whatever. But they're the newer team to Division I in general and have never won the conference before, so. The way this sets up, neither team is really in a bad spot. I don't think St. Thomas just beat North Dakota. They're playing a third straight road game, though, so that makes it, I guess, a little bit more difficult. North Dakota State just beat one of their rivals, South Dakota State, although South Dakota State's a little bit down this year. Odds makers are telling you St. Thomas is the slightly better team. North Dakota State down from 2.5 to 2 here. I guess I'll agree with the market reading leans slightly towards St. Thomas in that one, but it's difficult to play a third straight road game, man. So I'm going to stay off of it. In the Ivy League, we have perhaps maybe the two top teams in the Ivy this year. I don't know, because Yale is definitely the top team in the Ivy. Cornell is okay, but they just don't play a lot of defense. Cornell is off to an 0-2 start in conference, man, but I think they were a favorite in both games against Columbia and Dartmouth. Let me see. Yeah, they were. So Cornell has lost 2 games as a favorite so far, and kind of an inexplicable loss to Dartmouth, who's currently at the top of the Ivy. Make no mistake, Dartmouth, unless we have the power ratings way off here, Dartmouth is not the best team in this conference. Cornell taking that loss is just bizarre. Cornell's just very bad on the defensive end, man. So that was an ugly loss. Maybe they were looking ahead to Yale, so they should show up against Yale. Problem is, Yale is coming off an ugly loss on the road to Princeton. Yale has not played at home yet, so this is their conference home opener, so they should show up as well. That was an ugly loss, man. Princeton, even though they're 2-0 in conference, they're not that good this year. So we'll see. They might be one of the better-ish teams in the Ivy still, but that was not a good loss for Yale, man. Yale, let me see, was a 7.5-point favorite in this game. So, not a good loss as a favorite for Yale. So, I think both teams should show up in this game. Yale's down from 9.5 to 9. Total is pretty high, although it's down to 176. But you're looking at, again, Cornell likes to go fast. They don't play defense. Yale is also actually very bad on the defensive end and top 50 team offensively. So, Yale, very, very weird team, man, where they play slow, but they also don't play defense. So, I don't really hate the idea of an over in this game, and the total's way high for a reason. I don't know which one of these teams is coming off a more disgusting loss, to be honest. Although I'd probably lean to Yale just because it's their conference home opener and they are still the better team. They're laying 9 points for a reason here. So that's probably the way I would lean in that game, although their overall record does make them look like the better team anyway, which they are. So that's that game. Okay. Princeton is, of course, at Harvard. Princeton is coming off that upset of Yale. That was a big upset for Princeton, man. Now they have to go on the road, first conference road game to Harvard. And Harvard just won at Columbia, though, so Harvard probably was an underdog in that game. They just pulled off an upset as a road underdog, so both teams coming off upsets. Although I think Princeton's upset was bigger because it was Yale, and Yale's won this conference the last couple of years. Columbia hasn't been relevant in this conference, even though they started off good in the outer conference last year. They proved that they were not legit when conference play started last year. Columbia looks a little bit more legit this year, but I would probably lean to Harvard in this one. They're laying 4.5. It's a low total, though, 132. So points at a premium in that one, but I probably would slightly lean towards Harvard in that one with Princeton coming off the bigger upset. Also at 2 p.m., East Tennessee at Samford in the SoCon is on CBS Sports. East Tennessee, I think, is still the best team in this conference. Samford is a little bit down from where they were the last couple of years. East Tennessee is coming off that upset loss to Western Carolina. So they might be up for this game, man. That was kind of a bad loss, although it ended a 4-game win streak for them. So they could be hung over as well. Like when teams lose win streaks, sometimes they are hung over. But they could bounce back here because that was kind of an ugly loss. And maybe they were even looking ahead to a Samford team that's been pretty good in this conference the last couple of years, although not really this year. Samford is coming off a more difficult game against Furman, who is one of the better teams in this conference as well over the last few years, and remains that way this year. Furman was a small favorite in that one on the road. That was a tough game. So I think Samford is coming off the more difficult game here. Sure, they're going to try to get up for a game against the top team in the conference, East Tennessee, although Furman is actually slightly above them right now in the standings. I think East Tennessee is a little bit better still. East Tennessee did drop from 4 to 3 here, though, so the early market move is towards the Samford side, but I kind of disagree with it. I think East Tennessee is in a bigger bounce-back spot off an ugly loss that should refocus them more, so I would slightly lean towards East Tennessee in that one. Kyle, what's up, man? Yes, I apologize. Thank you, sir. It's just way too much for me to get to, man. I couldn't do it last night. I'm like, I can't stay up until 3:30 a.m., man. Maybe I'm way too old now. I don't know. I just couldn't do it. And now I'm doing this, and then I have to come back and do my normal Saturday morning stream right after this, which hopefully will be a lot shorter because it won't be college basketball because I'm doing that all here. And I'm planning on doing that around 9:30 a.m. Eastern. This show should be done within the next hour, I hope. Let's try to get it done, man. We're still in the afternoon here. My next play is about to be up here. Next best bet for you. We're going to be on Delaware plus the points here. I have to rearrange these, by the way, because I've already given out 4 plays. Kyle, I apologize again. I have 3 more. This is one of the remaining 3. Delaware plus 4.5 is a play for me in the Conference USA against New Mexico State. I think this spot is bad for New Mexico State, man. New Mexico State, probably actually a little bit better than they look, but I don't like the spot at all. I mean, they're coming off playing really all the top teams in the conference, playing on the road against Missouri State to within 7. Justin's Missouri State team, they're near the top. And literally the top 4 teams in the conference standings right now are literally the last 4 teams New Mexico State played. On the road at Missouri State, coming to within 7. They beat Western Kentucky at home, stayed at home, and they lost barely to Middle Tennessee. And then they went on the road again, and they took Liberty to the wire. And Liberty was a double-digit favorite in that game. Liberty is the team to beat in this conference at this point, man. That was a monster game for New Mexico State. But again, 4 big games in a row with big effort in all 4. I think this has got to be the flat spot here. Second straight road game coming in against Delaware, who's literally at the bottom of the conference standings. Probably won't pay attention. And up next, New Mexico State has Missouri State again. at home, and that's going to be revenge because they just lost at Missouri State, and it's the team that's fourth in the conference standings. So that's a big game as well. To me, this looks like a big-time overlook spot, and for Delaware, they're going to be the team that's looking for a win, man. They do have one win in the conference, but I think they're going to be looking for another. They could have had the win against UTEP in the last game. UTEP is the only team in the conference pretty much that's basically as bad as Delaware is, and Delaware couldn't get it done in that game. So I think Delaware staying at home, New Mexico State coming in. Yeah, I know Delaware does have Liberty next, but when they've lost 3 in a row, I don't think they're going to be looking ahead to anybody, man, especially after losing to a pretty ugly UTEP team. I think Delaware is going to show up for this one. We don't need them to win. They got to cover it. I think they can do it. We're taking the points with Delaware in this one. You can actually get 5 on this now, and it is a low total as well at 135. So points look like they might be at a bit of a premium in this one, which is good for taking the points. Now, for Delaware, they're at least better defensively than offensively. They're not a good team, but Ken Bum has them in the bottom, 60-something in luck, so they're an unlucky team. They play really slow. They're bottom 12 or 13 in tempo, so they're going to slow this game way down and ugly it up. They play okay, I guess, defensively at the very least. So their defense is better than their offense. And New Mexico State, slightly better defensively as well, although they're more of a balanced team. But New Mexico State, also an unlucky team, by the way, and they also do play slow. So I did say New Mexico State is better than their record looks. I know that, but you could kind of say that for both of these teams, on the spot is just really bad for New Mexico State, as I just showed you. So Delaware is one of the plays that we have here on the board today, on the card, let's say. So, yeah, that's it there. Both teams playing slow. Delaware playing especially slow. Hopefully means it's going to be a grind, a low-scoring game, whatever. CW at 2:15 p.m. has Miami and number 22 Clemson at a weird start time here. Man, hopefully I can get through all these games, man. Oh, my God. Miami's playing well, man. I mean, they're undefeated in the ACC right now. Haven't faced the most difficult conference schedule yet, though they faced a pretty weak one, in fact. They did just beat Notre Dame. Notre Dame was kind of close in that game for a while. Maybe Miami was looking ahead a little bit. They're not going to overlook Clemson, though. And, Miami, especially because they didn't even play that well against Notre Dame, so that might focus Miami a little bit more. Clemson is staying at home. I doubt that they overlook Miami, although they do play NC State next, which is kind of a big game, but Miami is right behind them in the standings, man, so I don't really see Clemson overlooking Miami, but Clemson's the better team still. The team is a little bit more battle-tested. They're up to a 4.5-point favor from 4. I'd probably have to lean towards Clemson in this one. Again, I think Miami, they got to show us something, man. Clemson has at least played SMU there in conference play. I think they had a more difficult out-of-conference schedule as well. But we can look and see what KenPom has to say about that real quick. Clemson's faced the 50th most difficult schedule. Miami, 248th. So there is a pretty big disparity in the strength of schedule. So non-conference schedule especially. Clemson's was more difficult than Miami's. So Clemson's definitely the more battle-tested team there. That's probably the way I would lean. Fox Sports 1 has an interesting Mountain West game with number 23 Utah State at Grand Canyon. Utah State's definitely legit. They have one loss on the season on the road against South Florida. Yeah, their out-of-conference schedule was somewhat weak. True, they played a couple of good mid-major teams in there, though. And they've been playing well in conference, man. And now they just beat Nevada, which I think Nevada was fairly close in that game against Utah State. Nevada put up a decent effort there. So Utah State maybe coming off a little bit of a scare here, but playing a third road game in 4 games, maybe not that easy. Grand Canyon's new to this conference, so it's not that familiar of a venue for these conference teams to have to go play in. Grand Canyon likely will be up for this game, man, because they're new to the conference, and they know they have the best team in the conference coming in. Grand Canyon was just on the road at New Mexico. Absolutely not an easy place to go, man, and they lost by 23. New Mexico, yeah, I mean, the Pit, it's one of the tougher venues of college basketball to play in, although it's tougher for non-high elevation teams to go there. Grand Canyon is at least pretty used to playing in high elevation. They do have San Diego State next, so it's a little bit difficult that they have 3 big games in a row, but I do kind of expect them to show up here. You know, I kind of lean that way to Grand Canyon. I just think it's kind of a weird spot for Utah State, even though you could argue they're going to be refocused after the Nevada game. They're down from 6 to 5.5 here. I would lean that way. With the initial market move there towards Grand Canyon, but no strong opinion on that game. Okay, we have another play. Most of my plays are in the afternoon, man. We have one like later play for me, but everything else is earlier. This is the one I forgot to add as a banner, so I'm doing it now. We're going into the Missouri Valley for this one here, where my Missouri Valley results have been kind of mixed, I know, but it's a more competitive conference, so it's kind of easier to find good spots in this conference than in other games. We're going to be on Northern Iowa -2 here, or I guess actually money line might make sense in this game. As I always say, the professionals will tell you, although they look like they're almost 2.5 here now. They're up from 1.5 to 2.5 here. The professionals will tell you if you have a 1.5, or 2-point favorite, it's actually more positive expected value to actually play the money line on it, although it depends what money line you can get on it. Let me just see what the money line is that we can get on this. Should we play the money line or should we just lay the 2 is the question. Let me see. Where are we at here with Northern Iowa? I don't have it in the system here either for me. Let me see. I believe I have all the other plays in here though. Although I want to make sure that I apologize, man. I messed up. I have Indiana, Butler, Delaware. Let me see. UNC-Asheville. Yep. SMU. And then I have my last one that I haven't talked about yet, and then I don't have Northern Iowa in the system, so I got to add that right now. Let me do that. I don't know how I'm looking at Action Network, and I don't know how they have this team listed for Northern Iowa. Iowa, yes, thank you. Yeah, they're -2.5 in most spots. I see a stray 2 at Caesars in Massachusetts. I see a 1.5 with only -113 juice at Bally, so that's not bad either. And Bally, Bally does have a pretty good money line on this at -129. I think that's what I'm actually going to do for this one. Bally bet, baby. They're new in Massachusetts, and they seem to be one of the stragglers that straggles behind. So I'm going to do it this way, but if you want to lay the points, you could do that as well, but I like the spot here. So I'm going to go money line on Northern Iowa here. I think the spot sets up well for Northern Iowa in this one. Northern Iowa is coming off a really, really hideous loss at home to Illinois Chicago. Illinois Chicago has been pulling off some weird, good performances in this conference, man. Illinois Chicago's been around, man. They've been, I think, in the horizon for a while. Now they're in this conference. Northern Iowa was a 6.5-point favorite in that game, and they lost outright. It was a bad game for Northern Iowa. I think they had a horrible shooting game. I know I haven't been diving into the box scores, but they were awful shooting in this game. 39% from the floor. Illinois Chicago, 53%. Only 13% from 3 for Northern Iowa, though both teams weren't hitting any threes in the game. Northern Iowa had a horrible turnover rate. They were -5 in turnovers, so that's one of the main reasons they lost that game, but they were coming off playing Belmont and Bradley, man, and they'd come off that big game against Bradley. So for whatever reason, I think they just kind of got caught there. Now they got to go on the road and play Valpo, and I know they already beat Valpo at home in an ugly, low-scoring game. I know, but I don't think they're going to overlook Valpo this time, even though they do have Illinois State, Murray State up next. You can't overlook teams when you've lost 3 games in a row, man. So I think Northern Iowa is actually going to show up after that ugly game. And for Valpo, even though it is revenge here, Northern Iowa's fallen to 5th in the standings here. And look at what Valpo just did. They just took Belmont to the limit. So Valpo just beat Illinois State. Then they played Murray State to within 13 on the road. Murray State's been good this year as well. And that game was close down the stretch, too. Valpo was within 4 points with less than 3 minutes to go in that game, it looks like. So that was a big game. Then they turned around and they took Belmont almost to the limit in their last game. And Valpo could have won this game. This game was tied in the final minute of the game. So Valpo almost pulled off a huge upset against what I think is the best team in the conference, Belmont, as 11.5-point underdogs. So I really don't like the spot for Valpo here, even though they did already lose on the road to Northern Iowa. I'm not going to be on the in-season revenge spot in every situation, man. Revenge is only one factor. Sometimes it's a small factor, and I think that's the case here. I just think the setup is way better for Northern Iowa here, so that is my play in that one. The money at least seems like it's kind of agreeing with me early on. I know it's a very low total at 129.5. We're looking at teams that don't score a lot. Let's just put it that way. Northern Iowa's almost in the top 100 in Ken Pom. They're very good defensively, 30th. Very weak offensively, but they also play one of the slowest tempos in all of college basketball. Valpo is also a slow-paced team. Valpo also weak offensively, decent defensively. So, yeah, it looks like one of those games that's going to be ugly and whatever, but we're really just asking Northern Iowa to win the game. Literally, we are. If we're only asking for the money line there. So that's what we're going to go with there, Northern Iowa. All right. We got Drake at Illinois Chicago as we get into the 3 p.m.s here. Hopefully not too much left to talk about here. Drake just pulled off an upset, man. They're coming off a couple of big games in a row. They took Belmont to the limit, and that's why here on the show we faded Drake, and they pulled off another upset, even though Southern Illinois was blowing them out in that game. And I think Southern Illinois is under the radar, and Southern Illinois had been kind to us the first time we played them. The Salukis didn't get it done for us in that one, man, and they really, really blew it. But Drake wound up pulling off the upset there. Now a second straight road game, and Drake does have Murray State next, so it looks like a bit of a sandwich spot here for Drake in between all these bigger games. But obviously, like I just said, Illinois-Chicago, they're coming off an upset themselves, a big upset on the road at Northern Iowa, so I don't know what they're going to have left in the tank either, although you probably don't overlook the team that won the conference last year, Drake, so I actually probably do lean to Illinois-Chicago in this game, but I don't like the spot for either team. They're up to 3 with juice. Illinois-Chicago actually favored against Drake. Total's gone up a little bit to 140.5. You know, I don't hate the idea of an over in that game just because I think both teams are in bad spots, but it does have the makings of an ugly game as well, though. And we'll see what happens, man. Because the Drake is not on my good side right now.
Boy, I'm really starting to dislike the Drake.
Hate the Drake.
All right. Next up, what am I going to talk about here? Quinnipiac and Merrimack is a good game in the MAAC conference, also at 3 p.m. Quinnipiac just lost to St. Peter's at home, so Quinnipiac got upset. That was an ugly loss. They're probably going to show up with a lot of focus here after a loss like that, although I know St. Peter's is atop the conference now, but Quinnipiac was the favorite in that one. Merrimack also lost to St. Peter's, though, in their last game, but that ended a long win streak for them. That was on the road. I believe Merrimack has had more time off. Let me see. Actually, maybe not. That was Wednesday. Or no, that was Quinnipiac played on Wednesday. So I think I'm right. Yeah, Merrimack, they haven't played since Sunday. So Merrimack has more time off, at least than the more rested team here, kind of. I don't really look at the rest that much in these college basketball scenarios. Quinnipiac is a favorite on the road, -2. They're favored for a reason, man. They are the better team. People might look at this and think that maybe there's some value in grabbing Merrimack at home because they have the better conference record, but I probably lean to Quinnipiac here. Losing at home to St. Peter's is uglier than losing on the road to them, especially because Quinnipiac is actually the better of these two teams. So that's the way I lean in that one. All right. What else do we want to talk about here, man? Jacksonville and North Alabama as we have A-Sun going on here. Jacksonville just lost at Central Arkansas and came to within 2 points of them. And Central Arkansas was actually a big favorite in this one, 7.5. So Jacksonville could be in a little bit of a hangover here. North Alabama just lost horribly at home to a really bad North Florida team that's literally at the bottom of this conference. So that was a horrible loss for North Alabama, although they do have Queens next. And Queens, my guy, the coach who follows me, is up near the top of the conference right now. I don't think North Alabama can overlook anybody right now after such a horrible loss to North Florida. So I like North Alabama in this game. and you're asking Jacksonville to play well as a big favorite 2 games in a row like this, probably not going to happen. Or actually, as an underdog. Jacksonville's actually a favorite now, so I don't know what's going on with that. Because I was assuming they were going to be a dog in this game, and they were a 3-point dog. Now they're a 3-point favorite. I don't understand why that's the case. So there might be some personnel stuff going on, but I still like North Alabama in that one. Whatever's going on, I'm going to assume it's an overreaction then in that case, and I would prefer North Alabama in that game, plus the points now in that case. All right. What other games do we want to talk about here? Let's see. We got SEC. I'm talking about the TV games at the very least, even though we're still in the afternoon. Missouri at LSU. Interesting game. On SEC Network at 3:30 p.m. Missouri coming off beating Auburn. Auburn's down, but they still have that name recognition around them, so a decent win for Missouri there. They do have Georgia up next, so I don't know if that's a potential look ahead maybe. LSU's kind of fallen off since conference play started. LSU doesn't even have a win in conference yet, so they looked good out of conference, but they played a week out of conference schedule. So the real LSU is kind of showing up here. LSU just played well against Kentucky. They actually played all right in these conference games, though, even though they've lost all of them. They've been pretty competitive in all of them. They got Florida up next, but LSU's still looking for their first conference win, so I don't think they're going to overlook anybody, really, although that was a big game against Kentucky, but Kentucky is kind of down a little bit this year. So I don't know. It's a difficult handicap in this one. LSU already dropped from a 4-point favorite to a 1.5-point favorite, though. So the money has come in towards the Missouri side in this one, or maybe there's some personnel thing, which I don't pay attention to in college basketball. I don't know. I mean, I kind of was leaning towards LSU in this game, man, because they don't have a conference win yet, and Missouri is already 3-1 in conference. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that line move there, but I don't have that strong of an opinion on it. 4 p.m. on ESPN, Arizona gets the ESPN billing, even though they're not playing that great of a team in UCF, although UCF was in the rankings for a little bit this year. They're not a horrible team by any means, although Arizona is obviously elite, second in Ken Palm's rankings and top 10 in both offense and defense. Arizona very, very good and balanced. He's got UCF down at 43rd, so not as good of a team. Both these teams on the faster side, although Arizona plays faster. Arizona's coming off a game where they didn't play well, or Arizona State did play well. Arizona State really stepped up their game for that game against Arizona, man. Taking Arizona right to the limit, pretty much. Arizona only got by that game by 7 in a game where they were like a 20-point favorite probably in that game. So Arizona didn't play well. Their little brother really showed up in that game, man. So I think Arizona might show up after that. Because when you have a huge favorite like that doesn't play well, it usually forces them to focus in the next game. Although it is a weird spot for Arizona, having to go all the way to Orlando to play this game. UCF is certainly not a pushover here. And UCF is coming off a win at Kansas State, though. That was a decent win for UCF. They were a little bit of an underdog on the road there. Now, coming back home, they're not going to overlook Arizona, but, I actually probably prefer Arizona in this spot just because they're coming off that lackluster performance in that game against Arizona State. Now, I do want to see who Arizona State plays next because I think they're in a major fade spot. They're playing tomorrow against Houston. I don't know. We'll analyze that game tomorrow, but I don't know. Like when I saw what Arizona State did in that game against Arizona, I was like, man, Arizona State's going to be in a major fade spot in the next game. Now, the money is disagreeing with me on this. Arizona dropped from 11.5 to 9.5 here. 67% of tickets on them, 53% of the cash coming in on UCF. So the money is coming in on UCF. I kind of disagree with it. The only thing that you could say, I think, is that it's a weird travel spot for Arizona. It's an unfamiliar travel spot for them. So that's the one thing you can kind of say about that. Hopefully for ESPN, although I don't like ESPN, so I don't want to hope for anything for them, but hopefully for the viewers' sake, it winds up being a good game to watch. Number 4, Michigan is at Oregon here. Michigan's still a legit team, man, even though they lost that one game. They didn't cover at Washington. It was a weird spot after losing their first game of the season. I thought they'd be in a hangover spot. Had to go out to the Pacific Coast. Washington did cover against them. Now Michigan plays again on the Pacific Coast after getting adjusted a little bit, playing at Oregon now. And after not covering, man, I apologize. I knew that sneeze was coming. Now, Michigan playing a second straight road game here. Dude, the winter just wrecks my sinuses and everything's so dry. I hate it. Now, Michigan does have Indiana on deck, so it is possible they start looking ahead to Indiana. So, I don't know, man. Will Michigan play better, or will they just overlook Oregon because Oregon's just not that good? Oregon just got destroyed by Nebraska, and now they're coming back home, and Oregon, an ugly 1-5 in conference right now. You got to figure they'll at least show up for this game. They get to host one of the big boys, one of the best teams in college basketball, Michigan. So Oregon, they're going to at least show up for this game, you got to think. And Oregon's going to try to muddy this thing up because Oregon likes to play these ugly, slow games. They weren't able to do it at Nebraska. But, man, that was an ugly loss, 90-55. You lose like that to anybody, I think you're going to show up in the next game. So I probably slightly lean to Oregon in this game, but Michigan's up from 17 to 18.5 now. 75% of tickets, 98% of the cash on Michigan. Yeah, this game on NBC again at 4 p.m. I kind of disagree with the Michigan side in that one, but I don't really want any part of Oregon right now either. So Oregon will try to slow this thing down, though. Oregon, they're just not that good of a team, although they're balanced. They're not lopsided towards offense or defense. They'll try to slow Michigan down, though, and see if they can ugly that thing up a little bit. The total's kind of in the mid-range at 157.5. So odds makers kind of not sure which team's pace is going to win out because Michigan wants to go faster. Nebraska, speaking of them, they're at Northwestern on Big Ten Network at 4 p.m. Nebraska ranked 8th in the country. Ken Bum has them probably 16th or so. Yep, I'm exactly right about that. Excuse me. So Nebraska, a little bit overrated. The money is coming in on Northwestern. 62% of tickets on Nebraska, 52% of the cash on Northwestern. Does look like a bit of a pros versus Joes market read here between Nebraska and Northwestern. Nebraska coming off that blowout win over Oregon. It's not a horrible spot for Nebraska. Yeah, they're going on the road. They've been a little bit worse on the road. That's the one thing you could say, these road conference games for them. I know one of them was a big upset at Illinois, but then I guess the other two were both upsets too, though. They were an underdog at Ohio State and at Indiana, I'm pretty sure, and they won all three of those road games. So they haven't won by margin in any of those, but they were actually an underdog in all of them. So they haven't exactly been bad on the road. And now Northwestern is going to be the worst team out of all those teams that they've played on the road so far. I don't know if they really have much to overlook here, though, because Washington's not that good either. So, I don't really see much of a reason to fade Nebraska here. Northwestern is coming in off a big game against Illinois, so they're playing two big games in a row, two meaningful games in a row to them. So I don't love the Northwestern side, although, yeah, the market is saying Northwestern, a strong market read like that with not really a great situation to latch onto. I guess I'll agree with the Northwestern side in that one, but I just don't have a strong opinion on that at all. Like, it's not a game that I recommend playing, to be honest. Although probably you're going to see a lot of sharps coming in on the Northwestern side in that one, it looks like. Give me 1 second as I have to blow my nose. I apologize. I'll be back. And you guys can look at the... I'll show more of the board here, and then we'll see. Because North Carolina is the next game up, and you can see what's going on with that market read. Oh, all right. I hate my sinuses in the winter, man. Number 14, North Carolina, Garrett's team at Cal on ACC Network at 4 p.m. North Carolina, they just lost to Stanford on the road, man. That was a tricky spot, having to go out to the Pacific Coast, but now they're at least adjusted to the Pacific Coast now. Cal is not as good as Stanford, so maybe North Carolina will bounce back now that they're adjusted out there and that they took a loss. They don't really have anything to look forward to next, really, against Notre Dame as their next opponent. So maybe they do show up. I think Cal probably shows up as well, although Cal is having to play Duke and North Carolina back-to-back. They lost at home by double digits to Duke, so I don't really see Cal being in a terrible spot here, but that was still a tough game against Duke. So, and, well, if you look at this game, it was fairly close until later in the game, and Duke pulled away in the final 10 or so minutes of the game. It wasn't exactly close, but, you know, the market read is saying Cal in this game, and I kind of don't agree with it. North Carolina up from 4.5 to 6, 50-50 on the tickets, 64% of the cash coming in on Cal. Money is saying Cal, but I kind of, again, disagree with that one a little bit too. It's tough for them to play both North Carolina Blue Bloods in back-to-back games, you know. And North Carolina, after getting punched in the mouth and then adjusting to the time zone, might be in a somewhat better spot there. So I'm staying away, though. Charles, what's up? Thanks for hanging out. Number 17, Arkansas. Number 21, Georgia is an interesting one here. Now, the odds makers have both of these teams a little bit the rankings makers have both these teams a little bit overrated. Arkansas is just not very good defensively. Ken Bum has them 24th and has Georgia 33rd. Both teams are better on offense than defense. Both teams play fast, so this game looks like a fairly obvious over, but you have to go over 181.5 if you want to go over in this game, which is one of the highest numbers that I've ever seen probably in college basketball. That is an insane total, but it's that way for a reason. Georgia's one of the absolute fastest tempo teams out there. Both teams are going to be running up and down the floor. They don't play defense, so definitely could see this game going over. And I would not play an under in this game, that's for sure. As far as the side is concerned, Arkansas just beat South Carolina by 34 points, so an easy win there. They do have Vandy next. So I don't know if they're going to overlook Georgia because Georgia's been pretty strong last couple of years. Georgia just took an ugly home loss to Ole Miss, though, as a favorite. So I think Georgia was already looking ahead. Georgia only beat South Carolina by 5 the game before that, so I think the public might want to jump in on the Arkansas side here, especially, they're the better ranked team, getting points, whatever. And yes, Arkansas is the better team, but not by that much. I prefer Georgia in this one to bounce back from that upset loss that they took. Georgia up from 2 to 2.5 here. I would lay it with Georgia if I was going to play it. With as many points as there were going to be scored in that game, it's also easier to cover as a favorite, although you're not asking them to do too much there. So that's the way that I look at that game. All right. CBS Sports, also we're still in the 4 p.m. slate. This is bad. Oh, my God. Richmond at St. Louis. St. Louis is obviously the better team out of these two. Richmond has been all right in the conference as well, but St. Louis is they're just the better team, man. Richmond just beat LaSalle, whatever. Yeah, they will show up for a game against St. Louis, but St. Louis just beat Fordham, which is also not any sort of impressive win by any means, and they're just staying at home here, so probably just comes down to who's the better team. That is St. Louis, although you're having to lay a lot of points with them in this one. They're a 15-point favorite. I see no real market indicators on this game yet. I would probably lay it just because I don't think either team is in a bad spot, and looking at the team's records, the 15 just kind of looks big, man. It just looks like a big number if you think the game's going to be at all competitive. So that's kind of my thought on that game. I don't really have a whole lot else to say. Nevada is at Air Force. Let me see did I miss any of these games I wanted to talk about? Utah. I talked about Florida State. Let me see. Yeah, let me see. There were a couple other games I was going to talk about, but I probably will wind up doing it anyway. Although I don't see them. I have them maybe in the wrong order here. I don't know. Oh, I was going to talk about Central Connecticut. I skipped that one, but so I'll go back to the afternoon there. Central Connecticut just won at Lemoyne. Really, I think this spot was about fading St. Francis when I looked at this. Yeah, St. Francis just took Long Island completely to the limit, and Long Island is the best team in the Northeast Conference right now, and St. Francis is terrible. One of the worst teams in this conference, and they were a double-digit underdog in that game. So the fact that they took Long Island completely to the limit like that, I think it's got to be Central Connecticut if you play that game. So that was my thought on that game real quick. Central Connecticut's a 6.5-point favorite in that game, although the total's not very high in that one. You're asking them to lay points on the road, and they're not a great offensive team. Maybe they're offensive. Where was I at? All right, I forget where I was at. We're in the 4 p.m. Oh, yeah, Nevada at Air Force. Air Force is a very ugly team, but I don't know if I love the spot for Nevada just because they are coming off that tough game at Utah State and now having to turn around and play Air Force. So maybe a little bit of a difficult spot there. Air Force still looking for their first conference win. Probably pretty much know you're at least going to get an effort out of them. So I probably slightly lean Air Force, but man, they are ugly. But it's a low total, 132.5. Nevada is a 15.5-point road favorite there. So you're asking them to lay a ton of points in a questionable spot in a game that on the road, in a game where it might be it's a spot that's a little bit iffy. So, I just don't. Yeah, I would lean to Air Force, but yeah, I don't have a strong opinion on it really. I don't know what else to say about that, but yeah, laying points on the road like that in a game, it's probably going to be low scoring, questionable spot. Yeah, I would. Wait, I thought I talked about Florida. Did I talk about? I thought I talked about that game, or maybe I didn't. I don't think I talked about it yet. No, I do not have important business. Jeffrey, what's up? No, this is a normal Saturday, but I couldn't do the show last night. I was just about to die, pretty much. This college basketball is so much for me to do. I almost don't even want to do it. It was so much easier when I didn't do this show because I would just do the handicap. Handicapping this board, I do every game, and it takes me 2 hours, and probably it takes most guys more than that if they try to handicap everything. And then I come on the show, and I got to talk about it all again, and the show takes 2 hours as well. I can't fucking do it anymore. And I have to turn around right after this. I have to come back and do the normal show that I would do on Saturday because I was going to do this one last night. I have to come back, and I have to do NHL, NBA, NFL. I haven't looked at any of that yet today. I'm going to die. This is ridiculous. Charleston is at Stony Brook. This game, Charleston just took a loss in I don't know, man. I would say it's an ugly loss because Towson, even though they're better than their record looks, Towson, they just don't look good based on their record. And that did end a win streak for Charleston, so it could hang them over to this game. So I don't love the spot for them. The problem is Stony Brook just pulled off a big upset of Hofstra. And they played UNC at Wilmington the game before that. So they're really playing the top 3 teams in the conference in 3 straight games, which is not easy to do. So Stony Brook might just run out of steam in this game, even though they should show up at least for a game against Charleston. Charleston did drop from 5.5 to 4.5. The total's low, 142. The market read is leaning towards Stony Brook. I kind of lean against them in the game. Slightly for me to Charleston, but I don't love the game at all. All right. And again, I'll try to talk about other games if you want me to, but I'm really trying to make this not take that long. I'm talking about all the TV games and a lot of the big conference games at the very least. I don't think I had much interest in most of these games here that I'm skipping over here. All right. So a little bit of a reprieve there, at least. Arkansas State at Troy is interesting because this is round 3, really, between these two teams. If you include the conference final of last year where Arkansas State was a favorite in that game, Troy won. Troy got into the tournament. Then Arkansas got their revenge this year, beating Troy at home. So now maybe we go back to the other side again with Troy in this one here. Arkansas State did just take a loss in a pretty tough game against South Alabama. 2 tough games in a row. Troy's going to be the team with the adjustments to make here after losing at Arkansas State. Troy, though, they just absolutely destroyed Southern Miss, and Southern Miss is near the top of the conference too, so I don't think I want any part of Troy after they did that, man, even though, yeah, this is a big game for them. I mean, I guess I'll slightly lean towards Troy in the game, but I don't like it. They're up from 3 to 3.5. I just worry that they're going to be also feeling really high off of that win, so those are my thoughts on that game. All right. I mean, if the Ohio Valley had like 2 of their top teams playing each other, I might talk about that, but that is not the case. Wofford and Furman is somewhat interesting because I believe this does have tournament revenge implications. Yeah, so Furman is the team that Wofford eliminated Furman from the SoCon tournament last year, so Wofford's the team that ended Furman's season last year. So Wofford won the conference last year as well, somehow won the conference tournament. So this is a bigger game for Furman, although Wofford is coming off 2 losses, and that last one was an ugly loss as a favorite to Chattanooga. So I think Wofford could also bounce back after that. So I could see this going both ways, man, which is why I'm not going to jump in on the game when there are some big factors that are conflicting with each other. Furman did just have a big game at Stanford, got the win there. Stanford a little bit down this year, though, but I don't think Furman could possibly overlook the team that ended their season last year. So all things to keep in mind in that game. Wofford is taking some of the money. Furman down from 7 to 6.5 here. You know, I don't know if I totally agree with it, but looking at this, it's pretty interesting, though, because Furman doesn't have that much better of a record than Wofford right now. So laying points like that, I mean, some people might think that line does look kind of big. The money is coming in towards Wofford, but again, because Wofford is the team that eliminated Furman last year, I don't really want it. Although, if that wasn't the case, if that conference tournament revenge aspect wasn't here in this game, then I would agree with Wofford in this game more than I do. I still probably slightly lean that way, but that revenge spot is what's keeping me off of that game. Or one of the things that's keeping me off that game, probably the main thing. 6 p.m. on Peacock, number 5 Purdue is at USC. Purdue having to go out to the Pacific Coast, man, maybe not the easiest spot, although Purdue is coming off not playing particularly well against Iowa. Purdue was a huge favorite in that game against Iowa, and they still got by, and Iowa's still a decent team. So I could see it going both ways for Purdue here, man. You could argue they didn't play that well. They almost got caught as a favorite, so they should show up focused here. But they're going out to the Pacific Coast. At least for them, it's not a really late game that'll really mess with their biological clock. But they do also have UCLA in their second game out there, and then they come back and play Illinois. So USC is the team that they might overlook in this stretch of a few games here, man. And then Indiana after that, too. So this does kind of look like the overlook spot in Purdue's schedule, though, like the one team they might overlook. Even though USC has a decent overall record, conference play hasn't been that kind to them. USC is staying at home. They did just get a win over Maryland, so they have a little bit of momentum coming into this game. Obviously, they're not going to overlook Purdue. They're going to try to speed the game up because Purdue plays slower. I would lean to USC plus the points in this one. I don't love it, though. Purdue down from 9.5 to 9. 75% of tickets, 94% of the cash on Purdue. So the money percentage is on Purdue for the time being. And yeah, I could see Purdue maybe being focused just because they didn't play that well in the last game. But no real strong opinion there otherwise. Number 6, Duke at Stanford at 6 p.m. on ACC Network. Duke, just like North Carolina, are playing their second straight game out in California. They beat Cal in their last game, which Duke kind of pulled away late in that game, as I showed you. Stanford is better than Cal, though, so it is possible Duke has a little bit more trouble with Stanford here, although they're now adjusted to the time zone at the very least. Duke is going to play one of their North Carolina counterparts in Wake when they come back home, but Wake, that game is just much bigger for Wake, though, so I don't know if that's really a look ahead. I think you probably would think, well, Stanford should get up for this game, but Stanford just beat North Carolina, so the spot's kind of iffy for Stanford, right? Because, yeah, they're going to get up for a game against Duke, but you're playing both North Carolina teams in 2 straight games. It's difficult to keep that effort up 2 games in a row. So, overall, I kind of lean towards Duke in the game, but the money's disagreeing with me in this one, too. Duke down from 10.5 to 10, 50-50 on the tickets, so Duke isn't really that public. 59% of the cash, though, on Stanford, so some of the actual money coming in on Stanford, but I somewhat disagree with that. On number 12, Michigan State is at Washington on the Big Ten Network. Michigan State just beat Indiana by 21 points, and now they have to go out to the Pacific Coast. Could be a little bit difficult for them. Again, these non-Pacific Coast Big 10 teams going out to the Pacific Coast, these unfamiliar venues, is a little bit weird for them. Washington's been decent. They've been a bit under the radar, but Washington's going to have to step it up again after stepping it up against Michigan in their last game. They only lost by 10 to Michigan, so can they maintain that effort 2 games in a row like this? I don't know. That is the question pretty much. So obviously I'm staying away from this game as well. Most of my games are early games. We have a fairly strong market read in this one, though. Michigan State being a 3.5-point favorite. It looks too easy to lay the points with Michigan, of course. Almost looks like a trap. I should get the "it's a trap" Admiral Akbar. Michigan State, 50-50 actually on the tickets, and then 85% of the cash on Washington. So the money is indicating on the Washington side. I don't really disagree with it just because the travel spot is weird for Michigan State, and laying points with a defensive team, a slowdown team like Michigan State, is a little bit questionable on the road. So those are my thoughts on that game. I somewhat agree with the market on that one, but I don't love Washington either, playing back-to-back games against the 2 Michigans either. So that's that game. CBS Sports at 6 p.m. has Colorado at West Virginia. Kind of a weird spot for Colorado to have to go play at Morgantown, man. Even though these Big 12 teams are getting used to playing at Morgantown, Colorado just rejoined the Big 12 not that long ago. And I think it was when Colorado was in the Big 12, a decade and a half ago or so, I think West Virginia wasn't in the Big 12 yet because they were in the Big East. So I think this is kind of an unfamiliar spot for Colorado. And Colorado's coming off 2 crazy games, remember. They made huge comebacks against Texas Tech and then again on the road against Cincinnati. Colorado was getting run out of the building in both games, and they made huge comebacks in both games. And then Colorado was close at the end of that game against Cincinnati. And Colorado's a big underdog in both games. I liked Colorado against Texas Tech, and luckily they did get the cover for us in that game. I didn't like them against Cincinnati, and somehow they came back, although Cincinnati, I think, wound up covering, and it was only because Colorado stupidly intentionally fouled again at the end of that game or something. But really, it wasn't a good spot for Colorado just in general. Colorado was getting run out of that game, so I think if you were on Colorado, you actually got lucky that they were even in that game near the end of it, because Cincinnati just kind of took their foot off the gas. But Colorado's coming up with those 2 big games, and now at least the travel's a little bit less for them because they're only going from Cincinnati to West Virginia. But off of those 2 games, now they're going to West Virginia, who's been a little bit under the radar. They're below Colorado in the standings right now, although I think West Virginia is actually the better team out of the 2. And then Colorado does play Kansas in 3 days, so it's a bit of a look ahead as well. So I think it's a bad spot for Colorado. This is one of the ones that's almost on my card, man. So the games that I've talked about that are almost on my card so far are Fordham, Utah. I said Central Connecticut, but I think that one's a little bit weaker. And West Virginia, I do like a bit. Although West Virginia, they're coming off a big game, I guess, against Houston, but they got annihilated. They lost by almost 30 points. So you got to think West Virginia will be in a foul mood after losing that badly, even though it was to a good Houston team. Now, the problem with laying the points with West Virginia here is obviously that West Virginia just plays ridiculously slow, although Colorado, I think, probably wants to speed this up, so West Virginia will probably make them uncomfortable by slowing the game way down, which is beneficial to West Virginia for sure. But do you want to lay 5.5 with a team that plays as slow as West Virginia does? It seems a little bit dicey. The total's still pretty low, 144.5, so that's kind of my main hesitation with this, because I do think it's a bad spot for Colorado. So I do like West Virginia in that game, but that one is not on my card. All right, we have Wake Forest and Florida State here, 6 p.m., ESPN 2. Here's this game. I like Florida State in this game, which if you know me, maybe you could have already predicted that. Wake Forest just played Miami tight, and then they played their in-state rival, in-state big brother, North Carolina, almost to the limit, or pretty much to the limit. They played North Carolina on the road to within 3 points. This game was within one possession in the final minute of the game, man. So Wake Forest went right to the wire with them. And after Florida State, they got SMU and then Duke after that. I would probably be on Florida State if they had Duke, if Wake Forest had Duke literally in their next game, but they have SMU next, which, you know, maybe makes it a little bit less of a sandwich, although I think it is still a sandwich. Going on the road to Florida State. Florida State's still desperate for their first conference win. Now, Florida State did just have to go up to Syracuse, though, and they played pretty well as an underdog against Syracuse, and I think wound up only covering the opening number and not the closing number, because that number dropped quite a bit on Syracuse. I think a lot of money came in on Florida State in that game. They played okay in the game, and Florida State does have a big game up next against Miami, so that is one of my concerns, that's a huge game coming up next against Miami, and Wake is kind of this middling team, but I think Florida State they don't really have the ability to overlook anybody right now. So yes, I like Florida State in this game. Wake is down from 2-1 here. This is almost on my card. I have a few concerns with it more than I do with the other games. But yes, I like Florida State in that game, yeah. Plus the 1.5 or whatever in that. All right. ESPN at 6 p.m. has Texas A&M at Texas. Both of these teams are in terrible spots. Texas A&M just played really close at Tennessee. That was a big game for Texas A&M. I think it went into double overtime. Yeah. So that was a huge game. That was a game that probably took a lot out of Texas A&M. They were, I think, a double-digit underdog in that game too. And when you have a double-digit underdog in a big step-up game like that takes that team to double OT and then falls short, you expect them to be flat in the next game, man. And this is a third road game in 4 games as well, a second straight road game. A lot of negatives for Texas A&M here. The problem is, how can I recommend Texas when they just beat Alabama and Vandy back-to-back and just handed Vandy their first loss of the season? I can't do it, man. And they got Kentucky on deck, maybe a little bit of a look ahead there as well, because A&M hasn't really been that good, although they are ahead of Texas in the standings. So, man, this is a difficult game to handicap. I don't love the side either way in this one. The money's coming in on Texas for what it's worth, and I guess I'll agree. Texas up to a 5-point favorite. But, of course, people that look at this matchup are going to think, how could I possibly lay 5 with the team with the worst record, right? But the odds makers are telling you Texas is actually the better team, so I guess I'll agree with that. A&M did have to put in more energy into that game against Tennessee at the very least. I'll slightly lean to Texas. I think the over makes more sense in this game. We're looking at 165.5. I think both teams are somewhat fast-paced. Texas is more of a mid-tempo team, but both teams lack on the defensive side. A&M is actually not that bad defensively. Texas is quite bad defensively and better offensively. A&M's more balanced, but A&M plays really fast. So, and with both teams not having like the legs to play defense all game here, I think an over makes sense in the game as well. 165.5 is the total in that game. SEC Network at 6 p.m. has South Carolina at Auburn. South Carolina coming off losing badly at Arkansas, so they might bounce back after that, even though it is a second straight road game. Auburn coming into this game off of losing at Missouri, so both teams coming off losses. So what do you do here when probably both teams are going to be focused, you know? So then it kind of comes down to, well, what does the market look like here? Not Missouri, South Carolina, excuse me. Auburn's actually an 11.5-point favorite in this game, up from 11. So I think that's kind of the deciding factor for me in this game, is that the spread looks insane. Like, who's going to want to lay 11.5 with a 10-7 team against another 10-7 team? The line looks insanely big, but the odds makers are telling you Auburn is actually the significantly better team still. Ken Bum's got them at 34th in the country. He's got Auburn as having faced the third most difficult schedule in the entire country. He's got South Carolina all the way down at 85th and having faced the 200th strength of schedule. So there are some things to like about Auburn here, and they might be a little bit undervalued. And again, the line just looks insane. Like, no public bettor is going to want to lay a price like that. So I think Auburn probably is the right side in that game based on that. Okay, next up we got, what else did I want to talk about here? We'll talk about, Belmont and Southern Illinois. Belmont is coming off that game where they almost lost to Valpo, so you got to think Belmont probably will show up in this game. Also, it's a road revenge spot because Belmont, I'd like it better if they had one conference loss. They have 2 conference losses, each by a point. But their most recent one was against Southern Illinois, and that's who they're playing right now today. Belmont lost at home to Southern Illinois, so I think Belmont is going to show up for this game for multiple reasons. Coming off an ugly game, and it's a little bit of in-season road revenge here. Now, I think Southern Illinois is better than their record looks. Southern Illinois is coming off an ugly game where they blew it against Drake, and I'm pissed again because that was a game that we had on the show, and Southern Illinois was blowing them out and somehow didn't even win the game outright. And you got to think they'll still show up for a game against Belmont, so I lean Belmont slightly in the game, but I can't get there with it because I think both teams are kind of in a spot where they're going to show up. Belmont's a 3-point road favorite, 50% of the tickets and 64% of the cash on them. I agree with the cash percentage in that one with Belmont, but not a game I'm that interested in. St. Mary's and Santa Clara is going to be a very interesting one out in the West Coast Conference here. St. Mary's just beat San Francisco, and they're playing a second straight road game here. Nice win over San Francisco, who's still one of the top half of the teams in this conference. Santa Clara is legit, man, and this might be a game where Santa Clara is going to have more energy in this game, more focus, because St. Mary's coming off another big game there against San Francisco. They should show up for a game against Santa Clara, but the spot sets up better for Santa Clara, staying at home for a third game in a row. They just beat Pacific, not a big win there. Although Pacific's okay. They're better than their record looks. Huge game. I think it's a bigger game for Santa Clara because St. Mary's has been one of the teams to beat in this conference for so long. And Santa Clara this year looks like they're kind of bridging the gap a little bit to the point where they're actually a favorite in this game. Flip from a 1-point dog to a 1.5-point favorite. 95% of the cash on Santa Clara. Tickets are 50-50. I'll agree with Santa Clara. I'll agree with the money in that one. So it's a slight opinion for me in that game. Although odds makers still telling you St. Mary's is the better team, but it's not that much of a disparity in that one. Okay. Let's see. What else do I want to talk about here, man? I know I'm skipping some of these games for time. Austin Peay and Lipscomb is actually probably the game between the 2 top teams in the Atlantic Sun, or the 2 best teams, even though I know Queens has snuck in there. But Austin Peay and Lipscomb, I think, are the best 2 teams in this conference. Austin Peay just barely got by Eastern Kentucky in the last game. I think Austin Peay was a favorite and probably didn't cover in that game. Lipscomb also didn't play that well against Bellarmine in the last game. They won by 10 at home. I think Bellarmine might have covered that number and was fairly close late in the game. Both teams are probably looking ahead to this game. Now the question is, which of these teams is the better team? And the odds makers, I think, are actually kind of telling you it's Austin Peay at this point, but I kind of disagree. Ken Bum has Lipscomb still as the better team because I looked. So there's a little bit of a disparity between what the odds makers are saying and what Ken Bum is saying, but maybe there's an injury or something because Austin Peay was going to be a 3.5-point dog, which I think would be more in line with what Ken Bum's numbers say. Now they're a 2-point favorite, so there's probably there must be an injury or something for Lipscomb because I don't see why otherwise Austin Peay would be that big of a favorite in that game. So, I think maybe there's a little bit of value looking towards the Lipscomb side plus the points there. But I don't have a strong opinion there. Of course, teams are going to be gunning for Lipscomb in that Lipscomb in that conference because they did win the conference again last year. So they do have a little bit of a target on their back. Number 11, BYU at number 15, Texas Tech is the later ESPN game at 8 p.m. Good game. Big 12 game here. BYU is coming off barely getting by TCU at home and barely getting by Utah on the road the game before that. So BYU kind of coasting a little bit here, and maybe we'll get shocked back into focus here. Kind of a weird spot to have to go to Lubbock, but they might be focused because they're coming off two kind of unfocused efforts here. Texas Tech, they just beat Utah in kind of a whatever type of game as well. I mean, they're not in a bad spot, really. So I think both teams are going to show up for this game. So it does kind of come down to which team is going to, well, I don't know. I don't know what it comes down to be honest. I think BYU has more reason to be a little bit more focused here just because they were more lackluster in their last couple of games. So the money has come in on Texas Tech, driving them up from 1 to 3. 75% of tickets, 77% of the cash on Texas Tech. So they are a slightly public side as well. I was kind of leaning slightly towards BYU. Ken Bum does have BYU 10 ranking spots higher, which is mostly, I guess, reflected in the number. So BYU, the rankings makers kind of have it right that BYU is the better team. They're not that far off with either of these teams. Texas Tech probably a little bit overranked by the rankings makers, though, as Ken Bum has them 23rd, and he's got BYU 13th. So both teams overrated by the rankings makers, but Texas Tech a little bit more overrated. So probably slightly into BYU for me in that one. ESPN 2 at 8 p.m. has number 20 Louisville at Pitt. Louisville's the better team here, but Louisville is coming off that big game against Virginia where they lost by 9, but that might hang them over a little bit into this game. I don't know how much attention they're really going to pay to a Pitt team that has been pitiful this year. They're not good. And Louisville does have Virginia Tech up next, so maybe a little bit of a Virginia sandwich. Virginia Tech is still above them in the ACC standings at the very least. And then Duke, SMU after that. So this looks like kind of the flat spot in Louisville's schedule here. Pitt coming into this game off beating Georgia Tech, so Pitt at least broke a losing streak with a win over a pretty weak Georgia Tech team. They're not going to be overconfident coming into this one, so I actually like Pitt in this game plus the points. The money is not agreeing with me as Pitt looks like a public underdog, but how could that possibly be right? Like, how is the public coming in on a below 500 Pitt team against a ranked Louisville? That doesn't make sense to me, but we see 67% of tickets, 58% of the cash on Pitt right now. I don't agree with that. I don't agree that those market percentages are accurate. Louisville's a 7.5-point favorite. I would take the points with Pitt if I was going to play the game, but I am not going to. CBS Sports has a pretty good Mountain West game at 8 p.m. between New Mexico and San Diego State. New Mexico usually plays on the faster side, where San Diego State's going to want to ugly it up and slow the game down, and may be able to do that at home. New Mexico coming off that win over Grand Canyon that I mentioned. A fine win for them. Going out on the road to face San Diego State, though, probably going to be the most difficult game they've played in conference play so far. And the most difficult game prior to this one was at Boise, and New Mexico lost that game. And Boise is a slowdown team as well, and Boise just hasn't been playing well recently. Though I think I was right about Boise last night, right? Actually, they pushed that game last night, but I was at least correct about them winning. So I think Boise is better than the record looks, at least. But San Diego State, I think, might be better than they are at this point. San Diego State just beat Wyoming on the road. A decent win there. Wyoming's been okay. Now San Diego State back at home. I do think the spot does set up better for San Diego State in this one. Both teams probably will show up for it, though. I lean San Diego State slightly. They're up from 3.5 to 4 here. Total's low at 145.5, which kind of tells you San Diego State's going to be able to control the tempo. Although, actually, Ken Bum has them as more of a mid-tempo team this year, which is interesting. And he still has New Mexico as the somewhat faster team, though. Although New Mexico is actually better defensively than offensively, which is interesting. But San Diego State's usually the more balanced team. They're better defensively than offensively as well. So we'll see. But that's my slight lean towards San Diego. And then my final play is here in the 8 p.m. slate. Let's go. The final best bet is Long Beach. We're going back to the pyramid scheme of Long Beach, although this is not at the pyramid. This is at Cal State Northridge, who I think is in a terrible spot here. And we're going to go with Long Beach, who I think is not horrible. At least they looked pretty bad at the beginning of the season, but they're under the radar a bit. They treated us well when we played them before against, who did we play them against? Bakersfield, maybe? I don't remember. It might have been Cal Poly. I forget. But Long Beach got us a win at some point in one of their home games. They're on the road here, but they're coming off a win at home against Cal Riverside. they're coming into this game with momentum, and I think Long Beach will not overlook a team that's above them in the standings like Cal State Northridge, whereas for Northridge, I think this is a lesser game on their schedules. Look at what Northridge just did. They just upset UC San Diego on the road. That was a huge win for Northridge. UC San Diego kind of ran away with the conference a little bit last year, except Irvine was still competitive last year, but UC San Diego's been really kind of the best team in this conference the last 2 years. So that was a huge win for Cal State Northridge, overtaking UC San Diego in the standings too. Now they're playing Long Beach. And up next, they got Hawaii, who is at the top of the conference right now. So that's a much bigger game. And then they have UC Davis and UC San Diego again after that. All those teams are above Long Beach in the standings here. So this looks like the down spot in the schedule to me for Northridge. I think it's a sandwich spot as well, sandwiched in between really the top two teams in the conference, UC San Diego and Hawaii. I don't like it at all. We're going to be on Long Beach in this one. I don't like it for the team that we're fading, I should say, in Northridge. Ken Baum, he's got Long Beach mid-tempo team. Yeah, they're kind of weak defensively, but whatever. Mid-luck index as well. But he has Northridge 37th in luck. So he has Northridge as one of the luckiest teams in the country. They play faster, but, even if they speed the game up, Long Beach should kind of adapt, I think, because they don't play slow exactly. And Northridge is actually bad defensively as well. So there's not that much of a gap between what these two teams do defensively. So I'm okay with it. It's a bad spot for Cal State Northridge. We're grabbing Long Beach plus the points in that one. Best bets, yes. I don't know what that is. Jim Leahy falling down the stairs. What is that? All right. Peacock has a big East game in the 8 p.m. slate here with St. John's at Villanova. St. John's just easily took care of Marquette. Whatever. I think they will be focused on Villanova because Villanova is slightly above them in the standings right now. Villanova coming off a win on the road at Providence, kind of a whatever type of win as well. So both teams are going to be focused here. This will be a bit of a tempo collision as St. John's likes to go fast, but Villanova is going to try to make the game uglier and slow it down and maybe frustrate St. John's. But I think St. John's is actually the better team, though, and I think they're maybe a little bit more under the radar than Villanova is right now. And the money has come in on St. John's. They're up from a pick 'em to 3. Don't know if I really want to lay 3 on the road with a total of 149.5, a game where St. John's doesn't score that well, and Villanova is probably going to slow the pace down. So I don't love it, but I slightly lean towards St. John's here. Maybe a money line type of deal with them. I don't know. 60% of the tickets and 63% of the cash on St. John's. So I don't know. I'm staying away, though. But I lean slightly to St. John's. Trailer Park Boys, no, I don't watch that shit. I don't watch Canadian bullshit. I don't understand Canadian humor at all. Letterkenny and whatever shit like that. I don't understand it. It does not register with me at all. American and British humor do. I don't know. And isn't Bubbles like a pedophile or something like that? I'm not going to give them any of my attention at all. We have the Battle of Mississippi, Ole Miss at Mississippi State on SEC Network at 8:30 p.m. I think Ole Miss is kind of in a bad spot here, man. They pulled off that road upset of Georgia that I mentioned in the last game. Now, of course, this is a rivalry, so they shouldn't overlook Mississippi State. And Mississippi State, I believe, won both games last year against Ole Miss, so there is double revenge for Ole Miss here. So there are reasons why they shouldn't be unfocused. I was going to say be out of focus. They shouldn't be unfocused in this game. But that was a big win over Georgia, man. So I think the spot does actually set up better for Mississippi State here. Mississippi State just lost to Alabama, staying at home. Yeah, I mean, the spot's a little bit better for Mississippi State. That's the way I lean in the game, but not going to make my card, obviously. Both teams are going to be probably, at least they're going to want to win this game. And, of course, like I said, there are reasons for Ole Miss to show up as well. 3.5 is the line in that one. The public might look at that and think the line's a little bit too high on Mississippi State, but I think it's kind of right where it should be. I don't think Ken Baum has these teams separated by very much. He's got Ole Miss at 60th, Mississippi State at 79th, so yeah, maybe the line's slightly high given that Ole Miss is actually the better team, but I think some of it might be factoring in the spot. So do with that information what you want. Way better than Letterkenny. Interesting. Oh, it was an adult woman, but his son's age. All right, whatever. If it was a young adult woman, then good for him. The Battle of Montana in the Big Sky is happening tonight at 9 p.m. Montana State. These are also two of the best teams in the Big Sky. So it's a big game. It's an interesting game. Montana State, I believe this might be a rematch of the conference final, if I'm not mistaken, from last year as well. Montana beat Northern Colorado, my mistake. But Montana won the conference last year. So maybe Montana State has a little bit more of a chip on their shoulder, but Montana just lost at Eastern Washington. That was not a good loss from Montana, so maybe they were looking ahead a little bit to this game. It was kind of a weird sandwichy spot there after they played Northern Colorado and Idaho. Northern Colorado's still good in this conference, even though their record's not that good. They've faced some of the more difficult opponents in the conference so far. Montana State just lost at Idaho, but that was a bigger game. Idaho, decent team. So I think the spot sets up better for Montana here, man, even though they did win the conference last year. So Montana State's probably going to have reason to show up in this game as well. Montana State's laying 5.5. Yeah, they're the better team. The odds makers are telling you that, but I think the spot's a little bit better for Montana. I kind of lean towards grabbing the points with Montana in that one, although it does kind of look too easy to do it. The line looks a little bit too high to the average public bettor probably. Gonzaga is playing at Seattle. Late night, Gonzaga, number 9 in the country. Gonzaga will be flying across Washington because they just won at Washington State in Eastern Washington. Now they're going to Seattle to play Seattle out west. Might be a little bit of a weird spot for Gonzaga, man. Seattle, they're going to slow the game down, try to ugly this thing up. Seattle's new to the conference. Gonzaga did already beat them, only by 8, though, at Gonzaga. And Seattle actually played decently in that game. Now, this is an unfamiliar spot for Gonzaga. I think maybe they do play sometimes in Seattle, but Seattle is new to the conference, so it's kind of a new venue to play at in conference play. Seattle's an okay team, man, and they hang around in games, so they're a little bit of a frustrating opponent to play. And Gonzaga wants to go fast. Seattle's going to want to ugly this thing up and slow it down. Seattle just ended a 3-game losing streak, although 2 of those games were Gonzaga and St. Mary's on the road. Obviously, you did not expect them to win those games. They beat San Diego in their last game to end that losing streak. I'd probably take the points with Seattle in this game, man. The money seems to agree. Gonzaga down from 16.5 to 14. It's not that big of a line, man, so it looks almost kind of easy to lay it with Gonzaga. 75% of the tickets are on Gonzaga. 81% of the cash coming back in on Seattle. So the money is on Seattle here. That's the way that I would play it, is taking the points with Seattle. Yes, Gonzaga is in Spokane, Washington, yes. So Seattle probably is going to consider themselves to be an in-state little brother here as well. So more motivation for Seattle probably in this game as well. But yeah, Gonzaga, they're more in the eastern part of the state in Spokane. So going out to the western part of the state, I don't know, it's a little bit of a weird spot. They don't have a big game up next, though, Gonzaga. They play Pepperdine. So we'll see. And then CBS Sports has Kansas State and Oklahoma State. Kind of a lowly Big 12 matchup here, where Oklahoma State has a good record, but they haven't done well in conference play so far, man. So maybe we find some value on Kansas State here. Kansas State just lost at home to UCF. UCF's been an all right team, but Kansas State was favored in that game, so it might be good for them to just forget about it, go out on the road. They're still looking for their first conference win, and at least Oklahoma State does have a conference win. Oklahoma State staying at home, did just play Baylor, took a loss in that game. I kind of prefer Kansas State in this game. Oklahoma State's up to 4.5, but 50% of the tickets and 98% of the cash on Kansas State. So the money's coming in on Kansas State. I agree with it in that game. I think the public's going to have a tendency to want Oklahoma State here because Kansas State's record is just so ugly. But the odds makers are telling you there's not that much of a gap between these two teams, even though Oklahoma State's kind of on the tournament radar and Kansas State basically has no chance to be a tournament team. But Oklahoma State, they're not that good, man. Like I said, they're not as good as their out-of-conference record looks they didn't play a very strong conference schedule. So that's going to do it. Ugh, man, such a long video. I'm going to be right back again probably in about a half hour after I try to handicap all the games for hockey and NBA. Hopefully it's not that much. I know there's a lot of hockey always on Saturday, but hopefully it doesn't take me too long. I'll be back in a bit for that. All of that. Of course, we'll talk NFL as well. Don't even know what my plays are going to be like yet for the rest of the slate here. But today, the other plays that we have college basketball. We have SMU plus the points, Butler plus the points, UNC-Asheville plus the points, Indiana minus the points, Delaware plus the points, Northern Iowa money line or minus the points if you find a better number that way. If it's 2.5, I guess. And then Long Beach plus the points. Those are my actual plays. 7 college basketball plays today. We're probably going to wind up with about 10 or so plays today would be my guess once I'm through everything. But we'll see. I'll be right back, man, after I handicap this. So I appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Pinsy, what's up, man? Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Charles, thanks, everybody. Yeah, and I got to get my Instagram videos out too, man. So hopefully I can get this done. I have to rest for a second as well. I'll be back. Learn to Tone on Instagram. Learn to Tone on Twitter. Like, subscribe, comment on the channel here, of course. Listen on audio. That helps me out as well. Review on audio, Apple and Spotify. Covered in Uke. My Uke channel on YouTube. You can check that out as well. Patreon.com/LearnToToad. Get some bonus stuff. Charles, I know I have to do one of your requests as well. I'm going to look into Toad the Wet Sprocket for my next one for you. I'll choose whichever song makes the most sense. I got to learn it because I don't know them that well, though. It'll probably put me in 90s mode. I'll be like, oh, yeah, I remember this song if I do one of their popular ones. And then I'm going to do another guy's request first, though. So I know I have to get back to all that. And then Losercast, check that out. The comedy podcast that I'm on, The Losercast. So that's going to do it. I've definitely heard them. There's no question about that. I mean, I grew up in the 90s. I vaguely remember them. I just was never totally into them. I was more into the Toadies. That was more of my style. Toad the Wet Sprocket I kind of throw in that realm with the Gin Blossoms and stuff like that, where it's oh yeah, I remember this song, kind of standard 90s alternative rock type of thing. That's going to do it for now. I'll be back. And the Spin Doctors, I kind of put in that realm as well. Maybe I'm totally mischaracterizing it, though. I don't know. I should not be because I'm a child that grew up through the 90s, but we'll see. All right, I'll be back. Peace for now.